The House Committee of Elections will now come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Laubenberg, Vice Chair Goldman.
Here.
Representative Reynolds. Representative Pat Fallon.
Here.
Representative Israel.
Here.
Representative Dave Phelan.
Here.
Representative Schofield.
Here. All right, a quorum is present. Members, just so you know, first and foremost, Chairwoman Laubenberg couldn't be here today because of a family illness, and our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family. Having said that, I know we heard a lot of bills last week, but we're not going to vote on any bills this week. We're going to hear testimony and layouts of a whole bunch of other bills today and tonight, and then hopefully next week we'll start voting some bills out. With that, the chair lays out House Bill 2354 for consideration and recognizes Representative Farney to explain her bill.
Thank you, Chairman and members. House Bill 2354 is simply about changing the date of the May uniform election date from the second Saturday in May to the first Saturday in May. I filed this bill because the Republican National Committee moved the date of the Republican National Convention from its usual late August or early September date in 2016 to mid-July. In turn, now states across the nation are needing to move their Republican state conventions up at least 45 days per Republican National Committee rules. With the Texas Republican State Convention being one of the largest political conventions in the world, it's no surprise that there are only a few cities in the state with venues large enough to host a convention of its size. With the requisite change in the convention date mandated by the Republican National Committee, there was only one venue large enough to host the convention within this necessary timeline per state statute and party rules. The state convention has successfully been able to move its venue from Houston to Dallas. Unfortunately, the new date for the Republican State Convention now conflicts with the May uniform election date in Texas. Many of the trained election workers and election day volunteers who would assist with the May uniform election date also serve as elected delegates to the Republican State Convention. This means elected delegates and trained election workers and volunteers would have to choose whether to attend the state convention or work the elections. In considering this challenge, the simple solution appears to be simply moving the election date up 1 week from the second Saturday in May to the first Saturday in May. This will help ensure that there will not be a shortage of trained election workers for the May uniform election date, and that is actually the intention of House Bill 2354. Thank you, members. That concludes my remarks. I think we do have some people who are here to testify.
All right, thank you. Members, any questions? No questions? All right. Thank you, Representative Farney. Okay, our testimony will now begin, and please remember to state your name, who you represent, and whether you're for, against, or on the bill. And this is House Bill 2354, and the chair calls Michael McCloskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. My name is Mike McCloskey, and I'm honored to represent Senate District 5 on the Texas State Republican Executive Committee. I'm here to speak today on behalf of House Bill 2354, which, once approved, will provide a solution to an upcoming problem. As Representative Farney explained, both political parties have moved their national nominating conventions up from the end of August to the middle of July to provide for an earlier access to fall campaign resources. According to party rules, delegate selection for national nominating conventions need to be completed at least 45 days in advance of the national convention, which necessitated state party conventions moving their dates earlier than they have been in the past. Our Republican State Convention needed to be moved to the second weekend in May, as this was the only available date that our Texas convention cities could accommodate. However, that weekend is also the same weekend as May municipal elections in Texas. This poses a problem because many of our attendees for the convention are also volunteers who work the election and would therefore be forced to choose between the two events. This could lead to a shortage of May election workers. One of the concerns that has been expressed is that our election offices like to have the May elections at least 60 days after the primary election. As our 2016 primary will be on March 1st, 2016, the first Saturday of May, May 7, 2016, would be 67 days after the primary. Also, by moving the date forward 1 week, it provides an additional week of time between the May elections and the primary runoff elections, which would give their offices more time to prepare for that event. The Republican Party of Texas Executive Committee recognized that this was a problem that needed to be solved, and that is why at its December 2014 quarterly meeting, the body unanimously approved a resolution recommending this change. Therefore, the easiest and best solution is to move the May elections forward 1 week to the first Saturday in May, beginning in 2016. House Bill 2354 provides the means to mitigate this problem, and I request your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions? Any questions? Thank you, sir, for your testimony. The chair recognizes Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democrat Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democratic Party. We're here in support of House Bill 2354. We really don't care when the Republican Party convention is, but I'm glad that they're getting to solve their problem. I'm more concerned about the bigger problem. And if we had our druthers, there are other bills that would take these May elections out of May in a general election year totally. The overlap between first primary, runoff primary, these city elections causes all kinds of chaos for your election administrators and county clerks, and they will, I'm sure, testify to that effect. Our concern is the confusion we saw in that the mail ballots, there are seniors who are getting a primary runoff ballot and a city ballot coming into the House at the same time. Those ballots may not be going to the same place. Seniors decide to save postage. They put both ballots in the same envelope. They put the primary ballot in the city election and the city election in the primary ballot envelope, and all kinds of chaos. And a whole bunch of well-meaning voters had their votes canceled, or I think there was a lot of passing of ballot envelopes outside the code to the right places just to make it work for people. And so we need to clean that up totally. So moving this forward a week helps a tiny, tiny bit, but the better thing would be to move them completely off of the period and having them at other times, perhaps in the odd year or on the general election ballot in November. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions? No questions. Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Janice Evans with the Texas County and District Clerks Association.
My name is Janice Evans. I'm the Elections Director for Missouri County, work under the County Clerk, and I am here testifying in support of House Bill 2354 on behalf of the County and District Clerks Association of Texas. Now, did I get it all right?
Got it all right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we are for this bill. We think that the moving it forward the 1 week is a great idea. A better idea would be moving ahead the last Saturday in April so that we can even get, we're happy for this. It got it off of Mother's Day. Mother's Day has been a pain in the side forever because you can't get election workers to work on the Saturday election when Mother's Day is on Sunday. Everybody's going out of town. So moving ahead 1 week resolves that problem. It puts another week between when the mail ballots are mailed out for the city and schools and when they're mailed out for the primary runoff. So we don't have to mail them 2 weeks in a row, just like we did, which caused lots of confusion. If it could be moved back 1 more week, we'd be sort of back where we were before you changed, before the MOVE Act came in. We had the primary election in March. We had the primary runoff in April. Most of us can handle those city and schools during the latter part of April. The MOVE Act doesn't necessarily, it applies, don't get me wrong, it applies to the city and schools, and we send those overseas ballots out 45 days in advance, but we can hold up some of those local ballots until after the primary in order to get those ballots out. So I'm just saying we really like the 1 week, and we'd even could appreciate if you considered 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair calls John Oldham with the Texas Association of Election Administrators for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. My name is John Oldham. I'm the EA in Fort Bend County, but I'm speaking today as president of the Texas Association of Election Administrators in support of House Bill 2354. I could just say ditto to the things that have already been said, but I will elaborate a little bit. Representative Farney is rightfully concerned that we do have shortages of poll workers, which will be exacerbated by competing with a convention. We already have that because of the Mother's Day weekend. So moving forward 1 week will help us tremendously in that regard. We also have the problem Janice and Glenn spoke about regarding the overlap of ballot by mail. This really became a problem after the passage of the annual ballot by mail bill, which I certainly support, but it creates an unintended consequence. Prior to that bill, I would have mailed maybe on the first day of balloting for city school elections, perhaps mailed out 600-700 ballots, and then the week later mailed out 6,000-7,000 runoff ballots. Last year, I mailed out 6,000 or 7,000 for both elections within a week of each other. Then we had mass confusion, people returning the wrong ballots in the wrong envelope. 1 week won't solve that problem, but it will certainly help. That will give somebody their city school ballot 2 weeks before they get their runoff ballot, and hopefully by that point they will make a decision, put it in the envelope, and mail it back in. As Janice said, we will take what we can get, but we would like it even better if it moved, if we widen that gap between the two elections. And certainly, speaking on behalf of our association, we don't have a problem shortening that time between the primary and the May city school elections. Any questions?
Any questions, members? No questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now calls Bill Fairbrother for the bill, testifying on behalf of himself.
Hi, my name is Bill Fairbrother. I'm with the Texas Republican County Chairmen's Association, here to testify for House Bill 2354. Okay. I could say ditto to everything. The new idea of moving it up an additional week sounds like a good idea to us. I will want to do some additional research. And besides saying ditto to everything else, for my friends on the other side of the aisle, if you move it up a week, my mother can be mad at me for missing Mother's Day because of a Republican convention rather than for a nonpartisan election. Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. Questions, members? No questions. Thank you, sir, for your testimony. The chair now calls Ed Johnson, who's for the bill with the Harris County Clerk's Office.
Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office, testifying for bill number. I got to get my glasses out so I can make sure I get the right number here. 2354. Y'all have already heard all the good reasons why to do this. I will throw one more out there. There is a bill out there and waiting to be heard that would allow election clerks to mail ballots 30 days before an election. This would actually, if you move the May election out a week and then shortened the time that we mail local ballots, it reduces the overlap between the May election and the primary runoff, so they're not receiving ballots for two elections at the same time. So this actually moves it back to where we used to mail ballots before the MOVE Act went into place.
Questions, members? No questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair recognizes let the record show that Representative Reynolds is present. The chair now calls Keith Ingram, Secretary of State's office, on the bill.
Hello, committee. This is Keith Ingram, Director of the Elections Division, Secretary of State's office. We are neutral on House Bill 2354, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, members? No questions. Thank you very much for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 2354? Seeing none, the chair recognizes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I should be signed up. I'm checking
Okay.
where it is.
Go ahead.
No. Testify. Ms. Farney's bill, right? This happened to me last week, too.
Glad we got this modern equipment. No witness card never got, you know.
Okay, we've got Dana.
Let me just refresh.
Yeah.
She's.
I don't fully.
Yes. I still have mine.
You need the updated one.
Oops.
Testifying for the bill. The chair calls Dana de Beauvoir, who's testifying for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dana de Beauvoir, Travis County Clerk. I'm here for county clerks today. What I have brought you, members, is a calendar, a sliding calendar that will help you deal with moving dates when you're trying to look at what to do about May election dates in conflict with the primary dates, and it will help you in a lot of different respects. If I may approach you, I'll be happy to hand you each one of these, and then I'll quickly explain it to you. The last committee found them helpful. I think you will too. I have to give Keith his new one. All right, quickly orienting you to the board. The top bar across is 2015. The bottom bar across the bottom is 2016. The little pieces, the little colored pieces, pull off and remove. They are magnetic. All right. So what you're looking for is the local election pale green piece, and you're going to want to put your election day dot. If you can see right there, it says election day. You're going to put that dot on the first Saturday in May, which is the best date for us so far if you ask everybody in our association. Although some of us think a week early could be just even that much better. But we're going to go with May 3rd or whatever, that's Saturday right now. And then the runoff that goes right next to it just bumps up right next to it. The length of that piece, that little piece of magnetic strip, represents the length of time it takes to actually do an election from the time it's called until the time it's canvassed, all right? And that's true for all of those election bars that you see there. As you can tell, the primary election is already set in place, both the primary and the runoff. As you can tell, when you start lining these up, you can begin to see very easily where the beginning of one election starts to conflict with another election. You can tell exactly what is it that conflicts. For example, one of the things that conflicts with local elections for the regular part of the election with the start of the runoff from the primary is that the logic and accuracy testing and the ballot board or sending out ballots by mail, all of that happens right at the time when you're trying to get ready for early voting for the local election. So the primaries and the locals conflict, the primary runoff and the locals conflict right from the very beginning. What we would like to say to you is please keep this handy because there's going to be a lot of bills coming to you, and we hope this will be helpful in trying to sort out all of these conflicting dates. We know that you have a hard job trying to figure out what's best for voters because we recognize really that's probably our highest bar there is to try to figure out what's best for them. The main reason we are supporting Representative Farney's bill is because it helps a lot, and I know you've heard this before, it helps a lot with this May election date. But we would encourage this committee to be courageous in considering the fact that you can see the damage inflicted here to voters, especially by mail voters. This is incredibly confusing, these overlapping time periods. We would appreciate this committee would consider any other bills that consider removing the May election date from even-numbered years. And you can see why this would be a good idea. We know you are going to hear feedback from the cities and schools that, oh no, this just can't be done. But the truth is it can be done, and it would be for the betterment of voters. And so we encourage you to consider that. I am available for any questions, and if you need additional slide boards, please just let me know. I will be visiting the rest of your offices to bring these by. Okay? You're quite welcome.
Members, any questions? No questions. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Yeah.
The chair recognizes Al Vera with the Harris County Republican Party on the bill.
I'm Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee testifying on the bill. The reason for my testimony is I don't want the committee to believe that dodging the bullet of this scheduled conflict has solved the issues of the May elections. We need the committee to understand that May elections in Texas and across Texas are a mess. You've heard some of it today in some executional or administrative areas, but we have a serious problem. Many of the local taxing authorities who run elections in May choose not to contract with the county clerk or the elections administrator to run these elections, and they know how to run them. As a result, the elections are a mess. They violate Texas election code regularly, and they disillusion Texas voters on whether their votes actually count. We need the committee, and I recommend the committee seriously consider recommending to the Speaker that an interim study be conducted by this committee after the session is completed for a thorough investigation of what's really happening across Texas in the May elections. I'll give you just a quick summary of one election. May 2014, Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District, $1.2 billion bond, chose not to contract with the Harris County clerk to run the election for them. Summary, mail ballots. The elderly and disabled who are in the county database were totally disenfranchised. They received no notice of this election, received no mail ballots. Okay? Cy-Fair neglected until the last 3 days of early voting to notify the county to even send mail ballot requests to Cy-Fair. There was no public notification of the need to request special mail ballots for this election, and the only way an elderly or disabled person could request a mail ballot was to find the form buried deep in the district's website and fill it out. Hundreds of elderly and disabled voters, whose names we have, called the Cy-Fair district office and were told they could not request a mail ballot over the phone and could only request a mail ballot from the website. The instructions on the website erroneously informed voters requesting mail ballots to send the request to the county. Of 13,155 total ballots cast in the bond election, 19 were mail ballots. That is 0.001. On average, Harris County receives 6.32% of all ballots as mail ballots. So the mail ballots in an election run by the county correctly are 50 times more than the mail ballots received by Cy-Fair ISD in an election where they suppressed the mail vote. A PAC opposing the bond appointed me as a poll watcher for the central counting facility, and I've seen all these numbers firsthand. I was there when they were counted. I was there when the mail ballots were open. Well, now that we've disenfranchised the elderly and disabled, let's see how we can disenfranchise the rest of the voters. All stationary polling places are grade schools with 2 district offices. That's it. You can't vote unless you go to a school to vote. Multiple mobile voting machines. When I was young, we had the bookmobile. Now we have the vote-mobile. Served district schools only. They went to no other location where general population voters could vote. They only went to the schools, and they opened at 2:30 and they closed at 6. To further confuse voters on whether they should vote in person, the district replaced the established and known county precinct numbers, and we have a bill coming up on that in a minute, with new arbitrary voting area designations using letters. I was no longer voting in precinct 650, I was in precinct L. I have no idea where precinct L is. Voting hours for the fixed facilities were totally different than the established county voting hours for early voting. Polls open at the end of the school day, closed earlier than usual. On election day, okay, oh, by the way, of the 19 mail ballots cast, the bond lost. So I'm not surprised that the mail ballots were suppressed. On election day, the yes-no votes were very close. The bond passed primarily because of the votes cast during early voting at only school district locations, school locations, and the vote-mobile. I wish what I just described to you was an exception. It's not. Okay? If you wonder why Texas voter turnout is dropping, this is one of the big reasons. Get out there with us, ride around during the May elections, and see what the people are seeing. We need you, the Elections Committee, to help us correct the situation. Tell the Speaker you need an interim study of the May election statewide. We'll bring you all the witnesses and affidavits you want, and let's try to get this fixed. I'll answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Representative Reynolds?
Is it your position that all of the May municipal elections should be moved to November?
I can't say all of them, sir, but I can tell you that the elections that are run by taxing authorities other than those who are experienced running elections should be moved to November and run by those who are experienced running elections.
Okay. So basically we're talking about school board and city council races.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Fallon as going back to the committee. Any other questions, members? Other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 2354? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Farney to close on House Bill 2354.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I appreciate your thoughtful consideration of this bill. This may be the first time I've ever had one with no opposition, so yay! And then also, I would like, though, to respectfully request your support. And with that, I close.
Thank you. House Bill 2354 will be left pending at this time.
Thank you so much.
Feel better. The chair lays out House Bill 1177 for consideration. Recognize Representative Miller to explain his bill. I understand there's a committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, yes.
All right. Representative Phelan offers a substitute to House Bill 1177, and the chair calls Representative Miller to explain to the committee the substitute for House Bill 1177.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Currently, if a person shows up to vote, presents a form of ID acceptable under Section 63.001B of the Election Code, but whose name is not found on the precinct list of voters, that person would still be able to vote on a regular ballot. The person would be required to fill out and sign an affidavit stating their residence and other information. This bill would make a change to Section 63.006, allowing a voter who is not on the precinct voter registration list to vote, but only on a provisional ballot. This bill also adds a provision that for a voter who appears to not be on the list, an election officer will attempt to verify with the voter registrar that the voter is a registered voter. The bill also adds a provision that on a provisional ballot, a space will be added that allows for an election officer to check to indicate if they were able to verify the voter with the registrar's office or not. This bill came from my county elections administrator. So with that, I believe there are some witnesses who want to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions and reserve the right to close.
Great. Questions? Any members? Members, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much,
sir.
Representative Miller. The chair recognizes Alan Vera for the bill from the Harris County Republican Party.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party, Ballot Security Committee, testifying for HB 1177. Across Texas, voting locations on Election Day come as close as anything you'll ever see to legalized, organized mayhem. Though the majority of voters presenting themselves to cast a ballot are properly aligned with regard to precinct affiliation, registered address, and proper ID, it only takes a few anomalies to consume the attention of the judges and alternate judges present. Very few circumstances create more chaos than a voter presenting himself or herself to vote with major discrepancies in the key registrations. The worst of these is not appearing on the precinct polling list. Okay? The amended or the revised bill combining 1177 with the previously introduced 266, I think gives election workers, especially judges, clear guidance on how to handle the most serious of these election day dilemmas. The steps proposed allow quick resolution if supported by available data. If the data is not available, the solution of a provisional ballot moves the ultimate decision to the ballot board. The ballot board is not working under the same stress or pressure or interruptions as the precinct election judges, and the ballot board has access to much more information about each voter than the precinct election judges can see. In a calm, deliberate manner, without the distraction of other voters demanding attention, the ballot board can look at all the data available and make a much more informed decision on whether or not to allow the vote. This decision is better made by the ballot board and not under pressure by the precinct election judges. Please advance 1177 with the committee substitute. Any questions?
Questions, members?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. The chair calls Glenn Maxey on the bill with the Texas Democrat Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democratic Party here testifying on House Bill 1177. We have been working with Representative Miller's office. We think this bill needs just one more tweak. We need to make it coincide with the bill you heard last week. The fact that a voter registrar has verified that somebody should be voting, they should be allowed to vote. They're there. They should vote a full ballot, regular ballot, because they have been verified. This one, even when that's happened, causes that person still to have to vote a provisional ballot, and then puts it off to another committee at the ballot board to make a determination. The checkbox sounds like a good solution, but if the person is verified as a voter, they should have their vote a regular ballot on the spot and have it counted. And I'm hoping Representative Miller will make that change.
Members' questions? Representative Reynolds?
For the edification of, I guess, the committee, what typically happens to a provisional ballot?
Provisional ballot, person's not on the list. They are given an affidavit that they fill out to say why they think they should vote. They cast a ballot. It's put in an envelope. The ballot and the envelope go first to the voter registrar. Now, I'm not the election administrator, so correct me. It goes to the voter registrar, who checks to see if that person has a voter registration card on file. If they are on file, that's marked on the affidavit, and then it goes to the ballot board, where the committee of Democrats and Republicans look at these ballots and make a dissemination of whether they should be counted or not. Most of these are going to be because people aren't on a list. There's another bill coming later that Representative Israel has to take care of one of my biggest complaints about these kind of people who are on a list. If you are registered to vote with a deputy voter registrar, you're giving a receipt. I have a receipt in my hand. I go into the polling place. I'm not on the list. I am told you have to vote a provisional ballot. I fill out an affidavit. It goes to the voter registrar. Voter registrar is going to look, and guess what? I'm not going to be there with a card. Duh, I wasn't on the list, because probably my card never got turned in. There is nothing in the statute today that says that I have a receipt that says I registered to vote and I registered to vote in time that allows that ballot board to know that. The receipt never goes along. Ms. Israel has a bill that fixes that says the receipt becomes part of the affidavit. So there, in most cases, I think the stats will show that overwhelmingly the people with provisional ballots are people in the wrong precinct. And so they don't know where they're supposed to go. They allow them to vote a provisional ballot. And, of course, then if they pull the card, it's going to say, well, they were in the wrong precinct. Things like voting centers solve that problem. So there are ways to solve this stuff. Right now, it's a little bit of a broken system, and I think on this particular bill, having people to be able to vote a regular ballot and not get into that sort of, am I or not. If you verified it by the clerk, the day the voter's standing there, they should be able to vote a regular ballot.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. The chair calls Janice Evans with the Texas County and District Clerks Association for the bill.
Janice Evans, Elections Director, Missouri County, testifying on behalf of the County and District Clerks Association of Texas on House Bill 1177. I agree with...
We had testimony. We had written testimony that you're for the bill. You just said you're on the bill.
I'm sorry, for the bill.
Okay,
I'm very
you.
sorry.
And we're going to keep calling you Janice until you explain what happened to your hand.
I had a pinched nerve and a, what do you call it? Carpal tunnel. And I had that surgery Friday, and then I get a call Thursday that a bill that I asked Representative Thompson to do showed up today. Okay. We are all for this bill. This will also, and I agree with what Mr. Maxey says, we prefer it to be that they vote regular. And a lot of times when a person comes in and they're not on the list, and I won't say a lot of times, but it's happened to me. It's taken me 3 hours to get it corrected. That we've gone through, for example, one example that comes to mind is the gentleman comes in, he registered, he knows he sent it in, and everything that day it was postmarked. Come to find out, he gets a letter from Galveston County instead of Missouri County. Our county, because the area was so close, they sent it to the wrong county. They in turn said, yes, he should be valid. But by the time that ballot got back, I had to make him vote provisional. It came back. They had no record to be able to show it was valid and rejected the provisional. I think that if they've validated that they should be a true registered voter, then they should be able to vote regular and not a provisional ballot. It will save us a lot of time, and like you said, the ballot board doesn't always have access to all the information, and sometimes even voter registration, it takes them a while.
All right. Questions, members? Representative Schofield?
But you're for this bill, right?
Definitely for the bill.
Because we've kind of gotten off the... Almost everybody's testified to other things that aren't the bill in front of us.
Well,
so I just want to make sure...
the bill is the one, it's that provisional that we really think that they have the omissions list instead, which is what I think it was before.
Thank you.
I think Representative Miller will attest to this. Welcome to elections, Representative Schofield. This is what we were warned about. The chair now calls John Oldham with the Texas Association of Elections Administrations for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Rick, for introducing this bill. And perhaps I kind of steered you wrong because I called it to his attention a problem we have with somebody potentially showing up with an orange card or a yellow card or whatever's the valid one, and their name not being on the list. And according to the interpretation of the law, and this is a loophole stemming from the photo ID provision, they should be allowed to vote without provisionally, just be given a ballot. We saw that as a huge loophole when he asked me how you can fix that, and I said make him a provisional voter. And I said that based upon our sort of parochial attitude that we have electronic poll books. And so the chances of somebody not being in that poll book and being a registered voter in that precinct or in the county are almost nil. We can even receive cards from other counties that have been delayed by the mail the day of the election and push those registrations out to our
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you start over again?
I'm sorry. That might screw up there. I'm John Oldham, President of the Texas Association of Elections Administrators, speaking speaking for House Bill 1177.
I'm all for you praising Representative Miller, but after you introduce yourself.
Hey, he's my hometown boy. We got to do that. But we do appreciate his trying to deal with this problem. So we would support a substitute to allow the folks in the polling place to call to verify and allow the voter to vote without doing so provisionally, or we can live with the provisional. Either way is better than the environment that we have right now. So provisional voting is in our county, we're pretty happy in that we usually get to count about 20% of our provisional votes. The ones we don't get to count are generally those that are cast in the wrong polling place, but we hopefully by fall will be on vote centers, and there'll be no wrong place to vote anymore. So anyway, unless there's any questions, I would again reiterate our association's support for this bill.
Any questions, members? Representative Reynolds.
John, what's generally the timeline for a provisional ballot to be decided whether or not it's going to be counted?
In some cases, that decision's made even election night. In some cases, with our early or even before election day, based upon if they're provisionals from early voting. We know if the voter is registered or not registered, or if they, of course, during early voting, they can't vote in the wrong polling place. But those are pretty cut and dried, and we review everything, provide that, can prepare information for the early voting ballot board, who then looks at the information and they make a determination.
So I'm speaking on an election day vote.
On election day vote, the main reasons that, again, that we don't have, or the people vote provisionally, are they're in the wrong polling place and they don't want to go to the right place, or it's too late in the day to go to the right place, or they're not registered voters in Fort Bend County. We have a lot of people that bounce across the line in the Houston area and also the Cinco Ranch area that don't realize they moved to a different county when they relocate. So we have that, and there's no fix for them. There's not really a fix for the election, those who vote in the wrong place. Then we also have folks that aren't on the rolls that claim they registered to vote, and fortunately the DPS has instituted a new program where we can send a electronic request to them and usually in a few hours get back information. And about 20% of the voters who claim they registered at DPS actually did register at DPS, and a few years ago their ballot wouldn't count. Today we get that information usually the same day we request it, and we're able to count their ballots.
Let me rephrase the question. Election day, when does the ballot board meet after election day to determine those provisional ballots?
Oh, usually our ballot board will meet the ones from early voting, sometimes they will deal with election night, or election day, but usually we reconvene that after the period of time to cure the no ID voter. Along maybe the end of the week, they'll deal with some of those, and then we can either carry over that evening on the last day for overseas and provisionals, and or bring them back in the next Monday. So
I guess my only concern is that for those close elections, if we didn't allow a committee substitute to allow the once a person is verified by the registrar to vote other than a provisional ballot, that election would still be in limbo until arguably they got a chance to meet.
It certainly could be, and many of them are in limbo now. I don't remember if you remember a few years ago we had a one-vote election
Absolutely.
in Sugar Land.
Amy Mitchell,
and,
right.
There were 2 ballots from China that had been shipped from China, and the person that eventually won her opponent was a Chinese American citizen. And so everybody assumed that the election could change based upon those. We actually received them, but they were, according to the DSL shipping, they were shipped after election day, so they weren't counted. They weren't opened. We don't know who they were for, but everybody assumes one way or another. But yeah, we do have that now, and it's something we live with, and at least it gets some interest in the elections, if nothing else.
So basically, you would be okay with allowing once a person was verified, then they could vote a straight ballot.
I would be fine with that. And again, that's my.
Thank you.
When I brought this to Representative Miller, he said, "How do we fix this?" I said, "Make them vote provisionally." And there's again, that's a little bit of a parochial attitude from my standpoint, but I have no problem with verification as well. That's pretty much what we've always done. Yes, sir.
Representative Schofield.
Now, did I hear you say earlier that you have electronic poll books?
Yes, sir.
So if somebody's not on the poll book, they're probably not a registered voter in that precinct.
That is, well, actually, we have electronic poll books, and we've been online via wireless air cards for 5 years with those things now. I think we may have been the first county in the state to be online on Election Day with our poll books.
So absent the registrar by phone or whatever method verifying that voter, if you just let them straight vote and they're not on the list, they're probably not registered.
They're not registered. Now, on our poll books, we also have the entire election database. So if you go into Calvary Baptist Church, it'll tell you that you're in the wrong place, and they can also print you the address of the place you need to go.
So you ought to go to this other precinct. Right. Thank you.
Right.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Sir.
The chair calls Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office for the bill.
Got my ballot box with me. Ed Johnson, Harris County Clerk's Office. I'm here to testify for House Bill 1177. And to start with, I have a couple of handouts that I'm going to take out of my ballot box. And the great thing that this bill does is this makes the pile in this box smaller. See, if you could. I think here are some omissions lists, and then these are provisional ballots right there. Okay, I'm passing out a copy of an omissions list and a copy of a provisional ballots, the two forms that were kind of have been referred to here, for y'all to see what they look like. Let me close this back up. This bill currently, as written, and I will tell you, Representative Miller did a great job. He actually combined House Bill 622, did I get that number right, with his bill, because those two bills were on a train wreck with each other. One bill would have canceled the other, and we would only had one winner at the end of the day. So how practicality this bill will work is a registered voter or someone coming to attempt to vote will come into a polling location. They will not be on the list of registered voters. It gives the judge the authority to call the voter register to validate where they're registered. And just like you heard in previous testimony, 90% of the time they are registered someplace else. Or the other possibility is there was a misspelling with their name, and they're not in the right alphabetical order in the book, and the voter registrar can determine, hey, we put an A here instead of an O, and you can look and find the name in the poll book and vote them the right way. So calling the voter registers is one of the most important steps to start with, so that you can get the voter to the correct location, or contacting. People have electronic poll books and they can do it instantaneous with that. The number of people that are not on the list of registered voters is very small. The state has done a tremendous job with its team voter registration system, where they have the whole state online that you can access instantaneously on election day. So there are very, very few people that are left off. The omissions list right here is what we're currently using. Representatives, we have actually passed this bill last session to do away with this omissions list and go to vote on a provisional ballot. Unfortunately, photo ID was then implemented later on and trumped this bill. This bill has a hard time of being stomped on by other bills all the time. Stomped on it and put the omission list back into place. So this has already been passed once by this committee and by the body last time. The omissions list is a statement, and it just, you write in your name and your address and everything. This does not register you to vote, though. A judge, and judges get real confused about this form. They don't understand what they're supposed to do with it. When my name's omitted from the list, well, the voter said they were supposed to be on the list, so I'll let them in. We had 300 plus provisional or omission write-ins on the last November election in Harris County. 280 of them were not registered to vote where they voted. So those were illegally cast votes. Representative Reynolds, you were talking about holding an election up. When you would fill out a provisional ballot, the voter registrar then has time at 6 days afterwards that the ballot board starts to meet, normally, to start to validate these. But if they were allowed to vote on an omissions list and it's a race that's 1 vote or 2 votes difference, now you're into an election contest to have some judge determine, because this person wasn't registered vote in the district that they voted in. Now you have an election contest where you have a judge trying to decide what to do with this race because this person voted. If they voted provisionally on here, even though their name, they were a registered voter, their name went on the list, they got to vote provisionally. If they were voting in the wrong place, it could be determined before the canvass is final, because an election is not final until an election is canvassed 7 days after the election. So that's when an election is final, because you have all these other moving parts that are going on. And voting provisionally would allow you to come up with a conclusion at the end of an election. Voting on the omissions list just sends it to a judge to make a decision for a long, drawn-out court battle. So that's why we're really, really encouraging that, out of Harris County, we only had like 16 voters that were registered to vote that weren't on the list out of 2 million voters. I mean, 16 out of 2 million is nothing. That's a very small, insignificant part. 16 provisional ballots is not a lot of work to do when we're receiving all the others. So it makes more sense to be able to have them vote on the provisional ballot. This is a voter registration. I don't know if y'all didn't get a chance to look at it. The first page is instructions for what to do for photo ID. The second page, if y'all flip it over, actually has the form. The top of it is a voter registration application. So when if they're insisting that they live in this precinct, then when they fill this out, it will register them in this precinct. They weren't on the list of voters for some reason. There was some mess up in the system. So this would correct it right off the bat. They would be voting and filling out a voter registration application that would register them when they vote. When they write their name on this omission list, it doesn't register them there. They're still registered over in the precinct that they didn't vote in. And next time when they go vote, they'll have the same problem again. This fixes the problem. And it takes one more form out of this box, out of the 30-pound box. So it's really our suggestion that this is a great fix to have people. We have very few people omitted from the list. Most of the time they're just voting in the wrong location. It cleans up the election. It gets them registered to vote where they want to vote.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions, members? All right, thank you very much for your testimony. The chair calls Ashley Fisher with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Hello, Ashley Fisher from the Secretary of State's office testifying on House Bill 1177. If anybody has any questions?
Any questions, members? No? Thank you very much for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 1177? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Miller to close on House Bill 1177.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is good to see familiar faces here, by the way.
Yeah,
you
see a lot of the
I
same
enjoyed
faces.
my time here. You're going to have a great time. The goal is to have every voter who is registered to vote. That's unquestioned, okay? In close races, if you remember the Republican primary race with Comptroller Hager, we had that race, in order to get him over 50%, had waited until all these kind of votes, provisional ballots and others were looked at. So sometimes these close races do get prolonged a little bit, the seven-day window to reach that final decision. Not all counties have the same system that we do in Fort Bend County. You know that too. So another thing, it's a timing issue. How long is a voter willing to wait to cast that vote? And if the voter is willing to wait until that verification occurs, which may not happen depending on how quickly the election clerk can get a hold of the registrar or the administrator, that could take some time. So if allowed to vote, if that verification occurs, the same would occur if the provisional ballot is made. It's the same ballot. That provisional ballot checked after the voter's gone, that ballot would be counted, right? So that ballot's going to be counted either way, and that's the goal. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions. Or
Any other questions, members? No?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Miller. The chair withdraws the substitute to House Bill 1177, and House Bill 1177 will be left pending at this time. The chair now lays out House Bill 1996 for consideration and recognizes Representative Miller to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate this. As a former county chairman, I'm very familiar with the process of how the county chairman works in the primary process. Under the current election code, a county must have a chairman of a political party in order for a primary ballot to be created. If there is no chairman, then there can be no local candidates for countywide or districts within the county. Moreover, if no county party exists, no statewide or presidential primary occurs. This also creates a disenfranchisement of voters who wish to participate in statewide races or presidential primaries in that county. There's just no party system in place. So this bill requires that if there is no county chair or party organization, the state chair shall be allowed to hold the primary in that particular county to let those voters actually vote in the primary. That's our goal. Texas is the only state in the United States that has groups of voters that cannot participate in the selection of the Republican or Democrat nominee. So under this bill, the state chair shall contract with the county clerk or elections administrator of these counties for a ballot for statewide candidates and propositions. There need only be one polling place at the same location as the county holds early voting in the county seat. Hours of voting may be limited to the same hours as the office is regularly open. A county without a chair should not be required to hold precinct caucuses, though. Any voter who has participated in the primary or affiliated with the party can call a county convention, should they choose to do that, and shall conduct the convention in accordance with rules adopted by the party. All those conventions that occur after the primary. So with that, I believe there are some witnesses who want to testify on this one, and I'll be happy to answer any questions and reserve the right to close.
Any questions, members? No questions? Thank you, Representative Miller. The chair recognizes Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democrat Party for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democratic Party here in support of House Bill 1996. I'm passing around a list of those both Republican and Democratic counties who've not had primaries going back to 1996, I believe. Every election cycle, there are a number of counties that in West Texas and North Central Texas where the Democratic Party simply cannot find a chair. And conversely, there's always some counties that typically seem to be along the border where the Republicans cannot find a chair. If I could go out, and we've tried to do this, and knock on doors and find somebody to take a job as a volunteer where they're now in control of a budget of thousands of dollars that's in their name, and I have a pool in some of these counties of maybe 30 or 40 people to try to get to take this goal on, we just cannot find that chair. And because that's the way we have structured primaries in Texas, and as we talked earlier about, the witness said that May elections are a mess. We're going to talk this session with a number of bills that Mr. Miller has, that primaries in a lot of places are a real mess with election problems of fraud, abuse, and misuse of money by these volunteer chairs. And so as we talk about that, one way of solving this problem is the bill that Mr. Miller has to allow a single voting place. You'll hear from the clerks that they don't want to do it. But this is not a choice about whether they need to do it. We're disenfranchising voters. We have no way of making it work, the Democrats and Republicans in these counties. And so we're looking at a situation where voters are just told, you don't get to participate because the structure makes it impossible for you to vote in your county in these statewide primaries and presidential primaries. And that is a shameful thing for the state of Texas. So we need to fix this. Now, we could fix this in many ways. We could pass mandatory joint primaries, and that would solve it. But we will discuss that later in another bill. But this is a simple, very unique thing. Every county that's required to do this is already doing early voting for the other party. There's no place where both parties don't have chairs. So it's not adding a new kind of thing for early voting or for mail ballots. They're already doing it. And we're talking about just a handful of voters in each of these counties. So this is not a huge thing. And we've made this to be a single voting place in the courthouse, only open during office hours, simply so everybody has a right to participate in selecting their statewide officers and their presidential nominee. And I really hope that we will move this bill along and make sure that every Texan has a right to participate.
All right, thank you very much. Questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now calls Janice, did I say it correctly, Evans, the Texas County and District Clerk's Office, who's against the bill. Third time's a charm.
I'm glad I don't have any bills up.
Right.
I'm Janice Evans, Elections Director, Brazoria County, here speaking against House Bill 1996. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. On behalf of the county and district clerks. The county and district clerks, or the county clerks of Texas, have stated that they were against the bill and they think the contracting should be optional. I did go on the websites for the Democrat and Republican parties just to see, this would be a good time to check, that according to their websites, the Republicans, if there was a primary in March of this year, we had 5 Republican counties and there are 27 Democrat counties that have no party chair. Most of these counties are under 10,000. Most of them are even under 5,000. So just like they have trouble finding a person to take the chair position, lot of these counties, I think one of them sent me a notice that there are, of the 66 combination clerks in the state of Texas with 60,000 or less in population. So just like they have trouble finding somebody, the county clerks feel that this is not something should be required of them. It should be based on whether they can do it or have the facilities to do it. There's a lot to putting an election on, whether it be getting machines. I'm not going to even try to go over it, but these are pages and pages of stuff that we have to do in order for a primary election. Much less now. I'm not really sure if is it going to be the would the county clerks have to be the one to take filing fees and get something done too?
Is that the end of your testimony?
So, anyway, that's what they're for. They want everybody to vote, but it should be optional for the county clerks to contract.
Okay, any questions, members? Okay, thank you very much. The chair now calls Dana DeBeauvoir with the County Clerk's Legislative Committee against the bill.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Dana DeBeauvoir, Travis County Clerk for County Clerks. There's no need for me to make any additional testimony. Janice covered it.
Okay, any questions, members? No? Okay, thank you very much. The chair now calls Ashley Fisher with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Hello, Ashley Fisher from the Secretary of State's office on House Bill 1996.
Any questions, members? No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 1996? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Miller to close on House Bill 1996.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I made a statement earlier that said that I believe every registered voter should be allowed to vote in every election, including the primary. In some of these counties, as was mentioned, there just aren't people to step up and be county chairman. That can be a tough job. I know I did it for 4 years. So, but in the smaller counties, there may not just be somebody to do that, or even an executive committee within a party system. So this would allow those voters, who knows how many, but allow those voters to vote in the primary by the state party of that particular party contracting with the county clerks or election administrators. So, and these were only for statewide positions or presidential candidates. There'll be no filing fees involved in that. So with that, I'll answer any questions, and I'll close.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The chair. House Bill 1996 will be left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 220 for consideration at this time and recognizes Representative Stevenson to explain his bill. And you have a substitute?
Yes, sir, I do. I have a substitute,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Fallon offers a substitute to House Bill 220, and the chair calls Representative Stevenson to explain the committee's substitute for House Bill 220.
This is a pretty simple thing. That's come up a lot in some of these political things relating to the restrictions of certain names by general-purpose political committees. Maintaining integrity on every level of the election process is necessary for the survival of a representative government. A political campaign can often be controversial and costly and are subject to all levels of dishonesty. During primary elections, independent PACs are used to persuade voters towards a certain candidate, since it's customary for the elected body of an official political party to remain neutral during primary elections. These independent, often short-lived PACs advocate for a certain candidate or cause using a similar name brand associated with an elected official political party. This like kind of fool voters into supposing that a party is a given area of is endorsing such and such candidate or cause. It is in some instances an attempt to mislead voters. A substitute 220 would require that a general purpose committee post in a type not smaller than 1/2 of the size of a committee's name, a non-affiliation disclaimer regarding the use of their names if that name includes the terms Republican, RPT, RNC, GOP, Democrat, or DPT, and DNC without the respective political party's permission. This disclaimer will include all postings, be internet, published, distribution, or broadcast. The Commission shall terminate the campaign treasurer of the General Purpose Committee that violates this law. I'll leave it open for questions.
Who would be the person that gets to decide if they have permission? Is it the state party, the county party? Like if I have people in my district who want to be Republican pack of Katy, who gets to tell them they can't use Republican? Is it the county party, the state party, the local executive committee?
Would be from the state? State party, I was trying to think of it. I'll check just a minute, but I think that's the state party.
So if the state party gets crossways with the Harris County Republican Party, they can tell the Harris County Republican Party they can't use Republican in their PAC?
No, it just says that they have to disclaim that it's not part of the Republican or the Democratic Party. Just a disclaimer.
So under that circumstance, the Harris County Republican Party would not be part of the Republican Party?
No, I'm sure what you're saying here. Then I guess I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I'm trying to figure. I mean, I've always been. It's always been interesting to me that there are different folks who think, and the Democrats are probably the same way, that they're the party. Locally, my precinct chairs think they're the party, and they're probably right. My county chair thinks he's the party. The state chair thinks he's the party. The members of the legislature who are elected as Republicans think we're the party. And I'm just saying, which one of us gets to tell the other ones of us they don't get to call themselves Republican in their PAC, or have to have a disclaimer saying we're not really Republican? Which level gets to be the boss? And God forbid it be the RNC.
I'll have to look that up for you, but I'll get that answer to you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, members? No? Okay. The chair calls Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party for the bill.
Close.
Absolutely.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party, Ballot Security Committee for HB 220. Prior to starting and running my current company in Houston, I was national brand manager for the Procter & Gamble Company. I ran such national brands as Mr. Clean, Coast, Deodorant Soap, Biz Bleach, and 2 years running Head & Shoulders Shampoo. Brands are important, and we defended our brands vigorously. In fact, to not defend a brand against infringement basically was looked on by the courts as a failure to defend and therefore weaken the brand. The name of a political party has all the impact of a brand name and should be protected. The proposed bill proposes a simple process for guarding against brand name infringements. As for the current confusion in the language of the bill, I would recommend that a hierarchy of approvals be added to make it clear who has the approval authority. My reading would be that the Harris County Republican Party already has the approval of the state party to present itself as the Harris County Republican Party. I think the bill was designed to address primarily temporary PACs that arise during and after primary elections who tend to who tend to borrow without authorization party names. So I would recommend that with some clarification of the process, you should advance HB 220. Any questions?
Any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democrat Party for the bill.
I'm Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democratic Party in support of House Bill 220 and especially the committee substitute. The original bill had approval kinds of things. Now it's a disclaimer. I think that the language that says that disclosure that states that the committee is not affiliated with the named political party gets at the bad actors. The person who does the PAC that says Democratic Party for Glenn Maxey for state rep would have to disclose that they are not the Democratic Party. And that's the goal, is that full disclosure, that people who are trying to mislead voters. I think that the Democratic women of Blanco or the Republican women of Smith County, by definition, it says who they are, and you know who they are. It's the ones who mislead, and this would at least, under a complaint system to the TEC, I believe, is how that you would sort of jerk their TEC thing. It would have to be complaint driven to the Texas Election Commission.
All right, any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes John McCord with the Republican Party of Texas is for the bill.
Thank you, members. Here to support HB 220.
Please say your name and who
John
you're
McCord
affiliated
with
with.
the Republican Party of Texas.
Thank you.
As the state party and the county parties administer the primary, we do at the state level remain neutral. We do not endorse in primaries. But in the past, we have received calls from both reporters and voters alike inquiring as to why we endorsed a certain candidate over another in the primary. That's basically what this bill addresses, is trying to clean that up. We would also support clarifying language like is in the committee substitute to just allow the disclaimer on those, on pieces of mail or internet websites, things of that nature.
Right. Any questions, members? Question? No. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify for or against or on House Bill 220? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Stevenson to close on House Bill 220.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Texas Ethics Commission should be the final determinator, Mr. Representative Schofield.
Of who's in our party?
Texas Ethics Commission, TEC.
Yeah, I know who they are, but they get to decide who's in our party?
Yes.
Okay.
Close.
Good close. The chair withdraws the substitute to House Bill 220, and House Bill 220 will be left pending at this time. Thank you, Representative Stevenson. I guess the hazing can be over. He's only been waiting here since the start. The chair lays out House Bill 1327 for consideration and recognizes Representative Galindo to explain the bill. Is this your first bill you've laid out in committee?
No, sir. This is my
First one in this committee.
First one in this committee. That's right, exactly.
But this is my actually third official bill, so
Okay.
I'm a seasoned pro, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, not really. Mr. Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to lay out HB 1327. School board members play a very important role in our local communities and have a lot of responsibilities in the way their job affects the daily lives of our school-age children. It is a great disservice to our kids and schools when this responsibility is abused and school districts are mismanaged. However, parents and voters have little recourse when they see this happening. Unfortunately, many local and down-ballot elections, such as those for school board, are where citizens tend to be the least engaged and down-ballot voter participation is lowest, usually based on name ID alone and not driven by the very substantive local issues which hit close to our homes and affect the lives of our children. This is part of the...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't believe I laid out your committee substitute, and I need to do so.
Okay.
So I apologize.
No, that's all right.
Representative Reynolds offers a substitute to House Bill 1327, and the chair calls Representative Galindo to explain the committee the substitute for House Bill 1327. I apologize for that.
That's okay. I'm just going to continue where I left off, if you don't mind. This is part of the argument which I'm making before the committee today, that we must ensure our voters a viable means of holding our local school board trustees accountable, especially when the school district's accreditation rating is in jeopardy. The intent of this bill is not to put everyone up for recall, but to give voters the ability to use recall if there is severe mismanagement of a school district at the expense of educating our kids. In fact, the bill lays out a very detailed recall process. To order a recall, there must be a petition naming just one trustee to recall. To recall more than one member, there must be a separate petition for each trustee. A petition must have signatures that amount to at least 10% of the votes cast in the most recent general election for trustees, and all of the signatures must be registered voters in the district. Additionally, these signatures must be collected after the 180 day of a trustee's term and not 90 days before the petition to be submitted.
Representative Galindo, I hate to cut you off, but we're going to temporarily withdraw your bill because I want to be right about something, because there's an HJR affiliated with this bill as well.
That's right.
So I want to make sure we're laying out the right bill at the right time,
Okay.
so we don't do anything that we're not supposed to do. So the chair is going to withdraw the substitute to House Bill 1327 at this time. And let us check on that, and then we'll get
I move
back to you.
passage. No.
So we'll have to restart back over. All right, while we check on that, we're going to move on. Sorry about that, members, but we just want to be right. So the chair is going to lay out House Bill 675 for consideration and recognize Representative Bonin to explain the bill.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I appreciate you hearing House Bill 675. House Bill 675 relates to the use of a mobile phone by a person occupying a voting station. Currently, the use of wireless communication devices are not authorized within the vicinity of a station. A wireless communication device can be a useful aid for voters when they're waiting in line or while they're casting their ballot. House Bill 675 allows voters to reference information from a mobile phone while they're in an election booth. In order to maintain safe and fair elections, HB 675 requires that any information accessed be previously downloaded, recorded, or created prior to entry into the voting station. It does not allow for the recording of image or sound within 100 feet of a voting station. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and if not, I'd like to reserve the right to close.
Any questions, members? Representative Schofield?
Sure. So, Greg, when we talked earlier, I couldn't remember this bill, so I'm sorry that I didn't get to ask you when we were talking earlier. I had a couple of questions. There are sort of two, well, actually, there are three sort of things going on. One is we allow people to take into the polling place, typically a piece of paper written out who they wish to vote for, and this is basically what you're getting at, right? If they have
That's correct.
If they have a
if you have
slate
an
or
electronic document you would like to carry in with you as opposed to one that's printed out and on paper, this would allow for that.
And so that's what we're trying to allow. Now, my question is, there's sort of a second thing, which is we don't let people assist the voter or do certainly real-time communication with them when they go in there and say, oh, you need to vote for Smith for state rep, you need to vote for Jones for judge, going back and forth, hey, who do I vote for in county commissioner?
No electioneering within the
right.
perimeter. That's
and
correct.
So how do we police whether it is just a PDF that's previously downloaded as the bill calls for compared to them texting back and forth with folks and getting advice on how to vote while they're there?
Sure. And I have a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, it would be very difficult to police, and I would suggest to you that even now, although perhaps it's not compliant with statute, that can occur. And so admittedly, that would be a difficult thing to nail down. Secondly, with respect to communication such as voice calls or text messaging, a part of that, from my perspective, is just to preserve the sanctity of the area for the other voters and not to encroach upon their personal space or their environment because they may not be interested in your communications while they're in the polling location. If you think about it, during early voting or voting by mail, you actually may have someone at home with an actionable ballot sitting at their kitchen table, and Representative Schofield could knock on their door or call them. And while they're not technically in the voting booth, you're actually communicating with someone who actually does have a ballot. And so that does currently happen. I'm not advocating for that within the polling place. I'm simply suggesting to you that such things do occur. And I'm not as interested in trying to police as so much as to allow people to use downloaded information, but respect those who are around them in that polling place and maintain a quiet, safe environment.
I mean, I could certainly see in a primary, in a general, everybody's go, hey, vote straight ticket for my team. I could certainly see in a primary where they say, hey, when you get in there, text to star 475 so we can tell you who to vote for. If we're not going to get rid of our assist laws, then we ought to think about that.
It's a fair point, but on the other hand, if you walk in with a piece of paper that they just handed you that tells you who to vote for, I'm not sure that there's a huge difference between having that document on your phone, downloaded on a piece of paper. I'm not encouraging that you would receive it real time, but it's really not substantively dramatically different in my view. You're still going to receive that information if you choose to receive it. I simply would prefer not to have the communications out of respect to the other voters, not because I think we need to cut voters off from receiving information.
And my other concern dates from a very old, low-tech way of persuading voters. It used to be in certain places you had to go out and there was an old way of doing it. The first person would go in and cast a blank ballot and take the filled-out ballot, the blank ballot out with him, and the person in the parking lot would fill it out and give it to the next guy and take it in. Basically, all day long, they'd be voting people. But it morphed into having to show the local fire department how you voted if you wanted your dad to keep his job on the fire department. And there were concerns when we started doing the electronic voting systems that if you gave a receipt to the voter, they'd have to take it out in the parking lot in certain parts of the state and show the bosses that they voted the way they were supposed to. If we allow people to use things in there, it can easily be you better take a picture of your ballot before you walk out of there if you want to show the bosses in the certain area that you voted right. And I am concerned about that, and I want to make sure that doesn't become a practice that we end up inadvertently condoning.
Yeah. And the bill does not allow for the recording of an image or sound within the 100 feet of the voting station. So that would be something that would have to be enforced to address that concern of yours. But this legislation would not allow for the capturing of images while you're in the voting station.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Representative Fallon?
Question and some comments. I think it's a good bill, and really what we're doing is keeping up with the times. I mean, I remember last session with the electronic bill with, I think it was Representative Sheets, so you could show, if you get pulled over, you can show your insurance on your phone. I mean, things have changed dramatically just in these 2 years. These things are getting bigger. I mean, God Almighty, in a few sessions, we're going to have, they go bigger, and then they go small, and they go big again. But I think it is also, you're going to have, like today, I flew down here. They say, please put it on airplane mode.
Airplane mode, yes.
All right. As long as you're not talking, they don't care anymore. Okay, that's the deal. If you're texting, you're not technically supposed to be.
Are you telling me you were texting on the airplane?
I'm not saying I was or I wasn't. The point is,
he wasn't driving and texting. He was flying and texting.
Yeah, we're flying and texting is legal. Driving and texting may be illegal. We'll see what happens. But it's about keeping up with the times, because I think the concern with the airline industry was, all right, listen, we don't want you talking on the phone and mucking it up for the person next to you for 4.5 hours. What if you're texting really? The plane's not going to blow up, okay? So this kind of the thing, and with Representative Schofield's concerns, and I love the fact that it's in there. You can't talk in the photos. There might be some people that take photos, but Representative Schofield, you can take the photo to show their party bosses, and then they can change it as well. So I mean, you can get around it. So I mean, that's something that I thought of right away to do that. But I love this bill because of the fact that we are using these things like this. When you get your sheet, a lot of the times, because we're talking about maybe in some counties 50, 60 people on the ballot. It's hard. You either got that piece of paper, or now we're using so much electronic, you can do it and take your picture, like you do with your boarding passes now, and do it that way. So I'm all in favor of it. I think it's a great bill, and thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Sorry. Any other questions, members? Thank you, Representative Bonin. Chair calls Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democrat Party for the bill.
Glenn Maxey, Texas Democratic Party for House Bill 675. We always have hotlines for people to call complaints after elections. The number one complaint in Texas is fights over cell phones. And let me give you just one example from 2014 of how cell phone usage. Flaunt Academic Center at the University of Texas. All day long, the line was more than 300 people. It was raining and wet, and the kids were lined up around the Flaunt Academic Center under the portico, all of them within 100 feet of the polling place, and everyone with a cell phone in their hand. They waited for over 2 hours, most times during the day. And if you tried to tell a college student to put away their cell phone while they were simply still outside the building, but legally they were in violation of the law. the fact that we've already talked about the technology of helping people in a polling place. You can take a piece of paper. You can actually take a person. You can bring an assistant to help read the ballot, and nobody is able to overhear what the assistant and the voter are doing in that voting box. So I expect that there are times when people are telling people who to vote for with the person that they brought with them to assist them. And so this is just bringing it up to the 21st century. I believe that the better amendment on this is to allow people to also take a selfie in the voting box, because every student who actually got to the voting box and marked their ballot, the first time they had ever cast a ballot, there is a selfie. And I don't know how you put that in the statute, but at least if we're going to not allow pictures, maybe we should have selfies.
We'll call that the Lieutenant Governor Patrick Amendment.
The Lieutenant Governor's Amendment. Sort of like the hobby rule.
That's exactly right. Any questions, members? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Robin Chandler with the Disability Rights of Texas on the bill.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Robin Chandler. I'm here today to, on behalf of Disability Rights Texas, and we are neutral on the bill, sort of.
And can you state the bill number, which is 675?
House Bill 675.
Thank you very much.
I'm a policy specialist for Disability Rights Texas. We are a federally mandated statewide protection and advocacy agency for people with disabilities in Texas. It's our duty to ensure that the right of Texans with disabilities are upheld and protected. Under federal law, our agency is charged with pursuing legal, administrative, and other remedies on behalf of people with disabilities. You will probably get tired of hearing that paragraph at some point, but have to do it. Anyhow, I'm here with a little bit of a different perspective. I want to talk about assistive technology for people with disabilities. Assistive technology is simply anything that allows a person with any kind of a disability, whether it be cognitive or physical, to operate better, to operate in a way that helps them get through their day more naturally and with less barriers. Here, I mean, really anywhere, when you have a accessible voting machine, for example, that is a type of assistive technology. And as you know, in Texas, almost every polling place, with some exemptions, are required to have accessible polling machines. And these things offer assistance, I guess you could say, with a variety of physical, for people with a variety of physical disabilities, help them to vote privately and independently. If you're deaf, you can do it. And even if you have some motor skill stuff, we have, large buttons, and if you're blind, there's headphones, and there's also something called, not that all the poll workers know about these, but there's something called a sip and puff, where you use like a straw to get your, to enter what you're trying to do. So they kind of take care in many ways, many of our of the physical disabilities that people have, but they don't do much about the cognitive disabilities. They really don't do anything for people with cognitive disabilities. And these would be, it can range from any kind of mental or certain mental illnesses to things like Down syndrome, autism, dyslexia. The dyslexia and ADD, other learning disabilities, are on kind of a different part of the continuum as compared to Down syndrome or traumatic brain injury or autism. But the issues can be the same. And these people are many times deemed competent to vote, but there's the cognitive issues can be a barrier in itself. So basically what I'm getting at is that thanks to attention being paid by the industry, smartphone and tablets are coming up with all kinds of like apps and just the note-taking, for example, that help people with disabilities in their, operate in their daily life. And for voting purposes, just the note-taking feature alone, which is really a very low-tech kind of feature, but it can make all the difference. And I think other people have referred to it, and it was part of why I think this bill was filed, when I gather. They're also using tablets, but I can't tell you how many people I see with disabilities carrying tablets around, to assist them in their daily living. And just as an aside, as I said, the technology is already addressing, let me put this a different way. The smartphone and tablet technology is already addressing ways to help people with disabilities. And it, just like all technology, it is continuing to grow. And it seems like every few months there's new apps to help people with different kinds of disability. One example, and then I'll wrap it up, is that there's a text-to-voice app. So someone who can't communicate clearly, this is not uncommon with people with cerebral palsy, for example, can put something in text. It depends on what the thing is. Some people have a harder time using their hands. Some people have bigger issues speaking or walking or whatever. But there's a text-to-voice app that can be used. You text in what you're trying to say, and it says it for you. So for some people, that could just be when the poll worker says good morning, you say good morning. If it's a primary and they say, what party do you want a ballot for, then they say whatever party, the Green Party. Anyhow, that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, thank you very much. Any questions, members? No? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party against the bill. Yes.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying against HB 675. The bill's proponents want us to believe and to assume that every voter is inherently honest and will only use the phone as allowed by this law, that no voter would ever dream of using other applications on the phone other than to view a downloaded app with their guidance on the ballot. It'd be nice if that was the truth. Out there in the trenches, it's very different. Mr. Maxey said that his biggest complaint throughout the last election was fights over cell phones. Ours was illegal and improper voter assistance. It's still going on. We're battling with the Secretary of State's office, and we're not satisfied with the answer we've gotten. Two issues here regarding this bill. One is the issue of improper voter assistance and influencing a voter. Two is the right of every other voter to vote a ballot in secret, to not have someone else know how you voted. Okay? In the general election of 2014, one of the most controversial issues was the matter of improper voter assistance, from groups organized in the parking lot to ambush and accompany voters into the polls and influence their votes, to family members hollering over the tops of voting cubicles to tell a family member how to vote. It's an issue, and it's against the Texas Election Code. At its base, the issue involves a vote having someone other than the voter actually make the decision. I'll get to the key statute in a minute. But I may be here holding this phone looking at an app, and it may be totally innocent. But the minute I plug in this headpiece, the minute I put in my Bluetooth, the game changes. Now it's over. The game has changed completely. Are you going to tell them to take out their Bluetooth? I don't know. I don't know. At every early voting location, every busy precinct on election day, it's not possible for the election workers to monitor the voters and their cell phones to ensure they're using it only as allowed. In fact, Texas election code says that the election workers, when a voter is voting by himself or herself, or has brought a helper with them and has signed in, taken the oath, they're not allowed to go anywhere near the voter. They can't be near the voting booth. So any pretense that the election workers could control abuse of this system violates Texas election code because the workers are not allowed to be close to the voter when they're voting. Okay? So if the voters are not using the phone correctly and the workers can't go in there, what prevents the voter, okay, from actually making videos of voters voting at adjacent booths or otherwise taking photos of other people's ballots as they're cast? Okay? There's a problem. That's point 2, the right of every other voter in that polling place to cast a ballot in secret. That's what Texas election code forbids capturing photographic or video images inside a polling place. Today, Texas election code allows only the presiding judge to have and use an active mobile phone inside the polls. And those phones issued by the county have no cameras and no other function than to make phone calls. The Secretary of State recently allowed poll watchers to have phones inside the polling places, but only if they are turned off and completely disabled while the poll watcher is inside the actual voting area. Allowing voters to have multifunctional phones turned on inside the polling places opens the judge and the county to all kinds of repercussions. I recommend against moving forward on HB 675. Any questions, please?
Any questions, members? No? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes George Hammerline with the Harris County Clerk's Office for the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is George Hammerline. I'm with the Harris County Clerk's Office, and I'm here for to support HB 675. And I may have been against this in the abstract, but recently in Harris County, working in the larger polls, I was really surprised how many people 35 and under come in, and it's guys in t-shirts and guys in business suits. And when you tell them they can't use their cell phone to look at stuff, they look at you like you're from Mars, and they go, "Well, what can I do?" And they say, "Well, you're gonna have to go out in the hallway, open your phone up, write it down on a piece of paper, and come back in." And they're just looking at you like, "Why are you making this bizarre obstacle?" So we're thinking it'd be a time saver, and it just kind of reflects the mood. And if people are going to cheat, people are going to cheat. You can buy a camera lapel pin for $80 if you're really all that fired up about going in a polling place and filming things. I mean, you can already do it. So, and I think if you're going to influence a voter, they'll probably get influenced before they walk in the polling place to go, "Oh yeah, how am I supposed to vote?" I think they'd already been contacted from the higher ups by then. So anyway, we're in support of the bill, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Great. Any questions, members? Well, thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Seth Mitchell with the Bexar County Commissioners Court for the bill.
Good afternoon. I'm Seth Mitchell. I'm assistant to the Bexar County Manager. I do government relations for the Bexar County Commissioners Court normally, and I'm for the bill. Thank you, Representative Bonin, for filing it. It was actually one of the ideas that my Commissioners Court put on our legislative agenda for this session. And normally Jackie Callanan, my elections administrator, be here speaking on my in my place. She's today starting the first day of early voting for District 124. It's her third election this year and her 13th in the last 12 months. So she's busy. We're for the bill. Jackie persuaded Commissioners Court that this, as Representative Fallon acknowledged, this is just a tacit acknowledgement by the legislature that the cell phone is the go-to source for information for most people. So thank you.
Great. Any questions, members? No, thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Dana I knew I was going to butcher it one time tonight. Dana Debouvois with the County Clerk's Legislative Committee against the bill. Sorry, I apologize for that, but it was bound to happen.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dana Debouvois, Travis County Clerk, here for County Clerks, and I have testimony written for you.
Okay. Hand it to the clerk. I don't think you stated where you are on the bill. If you'll repeat that, please.
County clerks are going to be against House Bill 675.
Thank you very much.
with a lot of conversation among us about the details of this bill. We appreciate what Representative Bongman is trying to do here. And we do think it would be perfectly fine for voters to bring cell phones with them and to be able to use them all the way up until they're walking into the voting room. So we don't think the 100-foot is helpful any longer with cell phones. Nevertheless, we're a group who normally supports the use of technology. And we've used it ourselves in the workplace of the polling place because we've offered vote centers, electronic poll books, enhanced voting security at polling places for years. We are the ones who have introduced those kinds of concepts. But at this time, we can't support the wholesale use of cell phones by voters in the polling place. If voters were limited to using their phones only to access the information that was already compiled on their personal devices, a cell phone app that would help voters remember who they wish to select for various offices, that would be a terrific benefit. And we would all love that. But the problem is there is no way to limit voters' use of a cell phone or other device to just that purpose. And virtually all cell phones these days have cameras on them, so do the iPads. Currently, we're having enough trouble with voters who take pictures of themselves or their ballots or even of other people in the polling places, and we have disruptions because of it. Because the folks who are the 18-year-old who is so thrilled because he's voting his first ballot and he whips out his cell phone and he does a selfie of his new ballot to send to mama, he doesn't realize he has just broken the law and freaked out the people on his left and right because they think that he's taken a picture of them. And it is mind-boggling to try to deal with all of the little ins and outs of this. The only thing we can say is county clerks would like it if we could support people who want to use technology, even for the more compelling reasons of disability. But having a cell phone in the polling place creates this prevalent ability to take pictures of, the other people who are in the polling place. To not only just photo them, but videotape them and to do it surreptitiously, and we think that's just too great a risk to take. It leaves vulnerable voters open to all the abuses that are typical in vote buying and vote selling schemes and other predictable forms of intimidation. And while others may scoff at the voter who could be intimidated and say, oh, well, somebody will get to them anyway, we're the only group around whose job it is to watch out for all voters. Our techies who want to carry around devices to help them vote, as well as our voters who are uncomfortable, perhaps not all that competent, perhaps even brand new in the polling place. They need our protection just as much as anybody else. So while we want to have our younger voters have a convenient and happy experience in the polling place, perhaps even bringing technology assistance with them, we're uncomfortable at this time to think that using cell phone technology inside the actual voting room, that's what we're focusing on, inside the voting room, outweighs the risks such a policy would mean as a way to perhaps provide an easier avenue for voter intimidation and the disruption that it causes to the polling place. So what we would like to do is we suggest to the author that easing up on the rules for cell phone use all the way right up until you get inside the voting room, county clerks support. But we would strongly encourage careful thought and more study on the matter of allowing wholesale cell phone use among voters actually inside the voting booth, and the potential unintended consequences of this before we grant full use of this. Can we please talk about this some more, because we agree, we think there are some things that need to be considered.
All right. Questions, members? Representative Israel?
Hi, Dana. At the end of your statement, you say that we need careful thought and more study. I'm not sure what more we can study. Or how much more thoughtful we can be.
What about if we found a way, like and I know they can be defeated, but one of our elections administrators, very clever, tried for a very brief time to put tape, just a little piece of masking tape, over the camera part of people's cell phones as they walked inside the polling place. You want to keep your phone with you. You don't want to put it away. You want to keep it out. Well, then put a piece of tape over the camera part. I'm wondering if maybe that might be considered a reasonable kind of security way to defeat using the camera. It also sends a message to the voter that it's not the use of the device that's the problem. It's you telecasting everything in the place that's the problem. So we start to educate voters that there's a difference between you using it for your individual purposes, which we're not trying to trample on that right. We're trying to prevent you from...
Do you mind just staying close to the microphone?
We're trying to keep you from infringing on other people's rights.
So, Dana, what if we had just language amending this bill that simply suggested, if someone's approaching the voting location and you have a smartphone, let the elections judge know about it so they can tell you what the rules are around smartphones?
I liked that idea too. County clerks were...
Because some people take pictures and they don't know they shouldn't be taking pictures.
Right.
And they don't know that they're being disruptive, so they could get a little schooling from somebody and they'll say, oh, okay, but I needed this list because it reminded me who I'm supposed to vote for.
Right. I would have been way too permissive a parent, I think, because that always sounds like a good idea to me, too. A lot of county clerks were concerned that there were people who would ignore the instructions or that would, perhaps get
Well, those are the same people who will go buy the little mini camera and be disruptive anyway.
Well, I'm not sure if you've already got something in your hand, it's not easy to just sort of disregard. In other words, the point was that there were people who perhaps would not be cooperative and that you would have to get into some sort of a policing effort with them, and we're about right back to, okay, then what do we do with it? Whereas the conversation of, keep your phone, do whatever you want with it, I'm just going to put a piece of tape over the camera part, and then you can take it off when you leave, was not an argument. It was this is the part that's objectionable. Now, I'm not suggesting that as a method of dealing with it. I'm suggesting that that's where the conversation diverts. That we're not trying to say, no, we don't really want your cell phone in here. What we're trying to say is there's a difference between you and your neighbor. And that's the conversation that we find it difficult to have.
So if we had some additional language, we might be able to earn your support?
Absolutely. And let's go and talk to county clerks about it. What they're concerned about is not having arguments at the polling place that take up time, slow down lines, and don't educate people who don't want to hear it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Representative
Phelan.
Yes.
Representative Phelan.
What's the current penalty for violating this statute right now?
Ooh, let's ask the Secretary of State that question. I think it's a misdemeanor.
Okay. In your experience, has anyone ever been prosecuted for this? I've never heard of a single person ever being prosecuted for this.
No. Other folks have had difficulty with it. My experience with voters is if you ask them nicely to not cause a problem, they usually won't cause a problem, and it usually works out okay.
I can tell you on election day, there's plenty of candidates out there with pictures of their ballot.
Oh,
Twitter,
me too. Me too. I've seen it myself.
Testify to that. Representative Fallon.
I just had to thank you for all you do, because elections, this is the heart of our democracy. It's literally the heart. It's the lifeblood of freedom and liberty. So my concerns are not so much that we don't have enough. Like for instance, when we all remember seeing when the president goes in and votes, right? Whoever that president is at the time, or a big race. They got cameras in there.
Well,
and the earth, the sky didn't fall. And the people that are in there are all excited because the president's there, or the senator, or whoever's right. So I think that's a good promotion of the fact that, hey, we're having an election. Go out there and exercise your franchise.
Yeah.
And I would, in fact, entertain a selfie bill, quite frankly, of somebody. I just don't see the harm in it. When we're 100 feet out, you can be filming all day long, and magically at 99 feet. I understand the whole point of, if I do this to Craig. I knowing Craig, he's going to hit me in the nose, number one, and then but that's a clear violation of it. If I'm doing this and I'm looking at information that's not already downloaded, I don't see the harm. If I'm not taking a picture of someone else, I just don't see the harm at all. It's a device, it's yours, and I just think we're keeping up with the time. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. But thanks again for what you do.
Well, your point is well taken. And in the conversation among county clerks, my job today is to present the consensus.
Sure,
and there were plenty of county clerks who shared your point of view.
The smarter ones, apparently,
yes,
right?
Well, our consensus is that it is so difficult to get people to behave only this way and not do the photographs and everything else that so deeply offends other people.
Yeah, and you remember you just saying that too. Even though now it's they break, it's not the law, they do it anyway, and there'll always be those people that'll do some of it. But I think if we make it clear that there's no photos, but you go nuts and do your little thing, and I don't care if you play games, read the paper, text your mom, tell her that you love her.
Yeah,
that's great.
But don't send her a photo of your ballot.
Yeah. That may or may not have happened with some people we know. Okay, thank you.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you. It was suggested earlier that, what more can we study on this? But it's been my experience over the last more than a decade that we don't study. That we've had to amend just about every bill that came anywhere near this to say no phones. Yeah. And we don't, I forgot, House Bill 1927, Keffer had probably 4 or 5 sessions ago. The world stopped until we said no phones, and it seems like we've always told we don't let poll watchers, even though we have a 5-hour requirement, they have to be there 5 hours straight, and they have to today make a decision about whether to leave the polling place to phone in a violation they see it's occurring, and therefore be able to be kicked out and not be let back because they didn't do 5 straight hours, or you leave and make the call. So it seems to me that if we're going to start having a discussion of what are some of the things, and you came up with one, or one of your people did, whether it's putting it tape or whether there's anything, I don't think we've begun to have that discussion of what it is we can do that would allow folks to do the modern things they like to do without infringing on other people's right to a private ballot or not to be harassed while they're voting.
Right. Exactly. And what if we did educational program prior to the law being changed? Now coming, you can take just the text part of your cell phone application in with you, no photos, and everybody got the word in advance of the next election. That might be helpful as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, members?
And the secretary can tell you about the criminal provision for that.
We will call them up.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair now calls John Oldham with the Texas Association of Election Administrators against the bill.
I am John Oldham, President of the Texas Association of Election Administrators, and I'm speaking, I guess, against House Bill 675. And this, it's a hard thing to speak against this because I'm sympathetic. I'm actually the guy that told his judges that if the voter insists that they take their PDA, put the blue painter's tape over the lens, and that solved that problem. I knew I shouldn't do it, but I did it anyway. We know that there's selective enforcement of cell phones. For example, we have polling places in schools and hallways, and the kids walk by on their phones when things are going on. But we have a mixed bag of opinion in our association about whether this bill is, how far we should go in opening this door. But I feel obligated in my position to share the concerns of our membership as to the ramifications of opening the door to cell phones in polling places. And Dana and other speakers have already touched on some of these. Certainly we're concerned about security. You mentioned presidential, in fact, our president having his picture made in Illinois voting. That's illegal in Illinois to take a photograph in a polling place, just as it is in Texas. But it happens. We know it does. I was mentioned last week, I was an election official in Illinois. And believe me, that's not the only violation of election law. There is still vote buying going on there big time and throughout many places in the state. And the ability to show somebody who's paying you how you voted with a photograph of your ballot in the booth is significant. That's something to be concerned with, and that's a concern that some of our membership has. I personally have a bigger concern with disruption. If we allow a person to go over, pull out their cell phone to use that functionality to look up their choices, suddenly we're going to see 30 other phones whipped out in that polling place. And let me tell you, folks are rude when it comes to phone usage. They will to answer calls, they will talk loudly, and that's disruptive to other people who are attempting to vote. It can also border on electioneering. I can imagine the conversation. Hey, honey, I'll be home in a little bit. I'm up here at the polling place. Well, you should come up here, too, and we need to vote all those characters out of the legislature. You know, that gets to electioneering, and that's the kind of thing that can happen in line when people are speaking on a cell phone. We don't have a problem, and I think, we do have an issue, too. Once you're in that booth, you can receive text. How was I supposed to vote? I'm supposed to vote for this person. And you could do it audibly as well through a Bluetooth. These are things that many of our membership have concern about, although the majority of our membership wishes there was some way to allow the intent of this bill to happen without opening the door to some of these other problems. And finally, we're concerned about selective enforcement. We've got, 254 counties in Texas? Our fear is that in Harris County, voters will have the opportunity to do one thing, in Fort Bend something else, and Lubbock something else, and as we make this more complicated for our poll workers, what you can do and what you can't do with that cell phone, selective enforcement and selective application becomes a problem. Any questions?
Any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Cindy Weatherby with the League of Women Voters of Texas for the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Cindy Weatherby, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Texas and on my own behalf on House Bill 675.
Are you testifying on the bill or for the bill?
In support of the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. That's why it was.
I know it's been a long day, and you've heard a lot of testimony. We are the purveyors of the information, the kind of information that someone might be using in the voter's booth, and we support the bill. We thank Representative Bonham for introducing it. We know you're going to use your sage wisdom to determine what you're going to allow and when you're going to allow it. We would support that, and if you decide that you won't allow it within that voting area, we do think it would be a great improvement to allow it as you enter the area.
Okay.
And you have my written testimony with additional information. I just don't want to take up any more of your time.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Any questions, members? Bonus points. Bonus points, yes, absolutely. A model. Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes Bill Fairbrother with the TRCCA Legislative Chair on the bill.
Thanks again. Bill Fairbrother, Texas Republican County Chairman's Association, testifying on House Bill 675. We are very close to being able to support the bill. Our one area of concern is the word recorded material. Our fear is anything that can be played and heard by others could cross the line into electioneering. This is Senator Davis reminding you to vote for, or this is General Abbott reminding you to vote, go through your slate, whether you're in line or you're in the polling place. Pulling up your slate card or pulling up your spreadsheet of your preferred candidates or issues, all for advancing the technology, taking advantage of the technology. Let's just not accidentally allow electioneering into the polling place itself. With that resolved, we'd be strongly for the bill.
Great. Representative Israel.
Mr. Fairbrother, thank you for your comments. My concern is that we might lose this opportunity in this year, in 2015, to find a way to make this happen. And do you think that we could become close with some language changes to Representative Bonham's bill to get this done? I just don't want to let 2 more years pass and we're well into the 21st century and we haven't done anything positive along these lines.
Yeah, unsure anything else, but if you just change subsection E, a person who's occupying a voting station may use the person's mobile phone to access information that was downloaded or created on the phone before the person entered the polling place. I'm happy. Get rid of the word recorded. That means you can't play it back. You can't really make a PDF file visible, or your spreadsheet or your email from your friend telling you what issues you need to vote for. It's more, as far as I'm concerned, if you strike the word recorded, we're happy, and there might be a way to allow earphones or something to where it's not electioneering your neighbor or other folks in line. But yeah, we're that close to being able to support the bill.
Thank you for your constructive comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Chair now recognizes Janice Evans with the County and District Clerks Association of Texas on the bill.
Janice Evans, Missouri County Elections Director for the County and District Clerks on House Bill 675. There's already been enough testimony that I don't need to go over every little thing that's already been said, but I'm going to add one more thing. The county clerks do approve the cell phones going to the door, but I want you to put yourself in the position that you are a judge or a clerk. You are John Doe volunteer. You get a class of maybe 2 hours to learn how to do this. How do you control people when you start seeing phones come out? That is our worry. We're worried about how some judges are going to be nice, some judges are going to be ugly, some people are not going to know how to handle the situation. Maybe if there was something put in here that if you're going to use the app, you advise the judge, and they're at least aware of this is a situation. Other than that, I pretty well agree with what Dana and John has already said.
All right. Thank you. Any questions, members?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Ashley Fisher with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Hello, Ashley Fisher from the Secretary of State's office, here to speak on House Bill 675.
Any questions, members? Representative Phelan?
What's the penalty?
There's not a penalty. For Section 61.014, it prohibits use of wireless communications,
Why are we
but
here?
there's not a criminal penalty associated with that.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
It's what we call election regularity.
Any other
Any other
questions,
questions?
members? Thank you very much for your
You're
testimony.
welcome.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak for, against, or on House Bill 675? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Bonin to close on House Bill 675.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I was surprised at the number of witnesses, and I will tell you that we did not receive any significant measure of attention or constructive advice in the lead up to the hearing. So I
It's funny how that works out sometimes,
the
isn't it?
testimony. And I would like to just reiterate on a couple of things. I am concerned about maintaining a healthy environment for those who are there voting, which is why I don't really want to allow voice calls or the taking of photographs or images, which has already been discussed. I would, however, point out that while who we vote for is confidential, the fact that we vote is not. That is a matter of public record, so anybody can look up whether or not you have voted or which primary you voted in. That's not anything that would be secret information. The ballot is not secret. Again, how you vote is secret, but the ballot itself is obviously very public. And I was given this to show you. This is the sample ballot for Harris County. So let me unfold it for you here. So it might be helpful if you could bring something in to keep track of who you had decided to vote for. So I think some good points were raised, but all in all, I think that the technology is here. We have to find a way that we're going to be able to make our peace with it. And I'll just finally suggest to you that one of the reasons I've heard why some think this actually is a positive is that there are sometimes tensions between those who are working as election judges and those who come to vote as to what is acceptable and what is permissible. And this could actually defuse some of those tensions. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I close.
Okay. Thank you very much. House Bill 675 will be left pending at this time. Thank you, Dr. Bonin. Dr. Bonin, while you're here, why don't we lay out House Bill 2027 for consideration and recognize Representative Bonin to explain the bill. And you do have a committee substitute.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is a committee substitute.
All right. Representative Israel offers a committee substitute to House Bill 2027, and the chair calls Representative Bonin to explain the committee substitute for House Bill 2027.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2027 addresses the use of standard uniform locations and specifically with a concern to the practice of, quote, rolling voting, unquote, which is a practice through which machines may be taken to non-uniform locations in a time and manner that are not consistent. The committee substitute to House Bill 2027 amends the election code to require political subdivisions holding May elections to maintain consistent polling places over the course of an ongoing election. There is concern that some entities have attempted to sway the outcome of an election by rolling voting machines to targeted locations at targeted times during an ongoing election, and they would subsequently be required to use uniform November County precinct polling locations throughout their territorial jurisdiction, effectively barring them from soliciting votes from one segment of the electorate at the exclusion of others. And I would like to take a moment to explain the difference between the bill as it was originally filed and the committee substitute. Concern was brought to our attention that with the municipality, for example, in a May election, they may be currently in the practice of using a uniform election site or sites, but not every uniform November election site within their jurisdiction. And to require them to use all of them would be unnecessary in terms of providing access to the voters and would significantly increase their cost. And so what the committee substitute entertains is that as long as the locations that they're using, whether it be one or two or three or a dozen, it's their discretion. As long as they're all uniform locations, then that's fine. And they're free to administer their election and not expand beyond the single or more uniform locations that they find to be appropriate for their local jurisdiction. So that is effectively the difference between the substitute and the bill as it was filed. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Perfect. Any questions, members? Representative Schofield?
By uniform, you mean they all operate at the same days and at the same hours? Is that how I read this?
Well, but there are also uniform November County precinct polling locations. Okay. So that's really what we're specifically referring to.
Okay, so regular polling places, and I say it says here, or it seems to say here, same days and hours.
Correct, and so the goal is to maintain that consistency for the voter, and so again, the substitute allows for the use of any of the uniform November County precinct polling locations as opposed to
all of them.
All of them. The exception would be if you're going to use locations that are not uniform and move them about, then you would be required to use all of the uniform November County precinct polling locations in addition to your non-uniform and moving locations. So you would be exempted from using all of them if the ones you use are uniform and maintain constant throughout a given election.
Great. Any other questions, members?
I'd like to reserve the right to close.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party, to speak for the bill.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party, Ballot Security Committee, speaking for HB 2027. Well, as strongly as I was opposed to Representative Bonin's last bill, I am strongly in favor of this one. Testimony I gave earlier about the chaos of the May elections, at least by the local taxing authorities, makes this bill totally necessary. Totally necessary. I cannot tell you, as an appointed poll watcher during the Cy-Fair ISD bond election, how many voting places I visited only to find voters totally confused over where they were supposed to vote. They were not the uniform voting locations. Voters angry about the rolling voting machines in the vote mobiles that only stopped at schools and never allowed the general public to visit them. These kinds of inconsistencies in the May voting have to be put behind us. We have to give the voters a fair chance to express their will no matter what time of year the elections are held. Please advance HB 2027.
Thank you. Any questions, members? No. Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Colleen Vera on behalf of herself for the bill. Welcome back.
Hello, my name is Colleen Vera, and I'm representing myself speaking in favor of House Bill 2027. And the part that I think is going to be the most helpful for us in Harris County, we're out in the unincorporated areas, is Section 4 on the second page, because with the uniform locations, right, our last May election, we had an emergency services district election, a MUD election, and the ISD election on the same day. They all had different locations. And I don't know if you're aware, but in special services districts, a lot of them don't even have email. Don't even have a website. So the only way you know where the location is you have to drive to wherever their lawyer's office is or their building is and look at the paper that is taped on the outside. So you can't just look it up on a website somewhere. So I was also a poll watcher at the ESD, and people were coming in very upset because every election was not on their ballot, and then they didn't know where to go, and we couldn't talk to them, we couldn't help them. So this would really help that problem in Harris County, so I really urge you to forward this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? See none. All right. The chair recognizes Bill Longley with the Texas Municipal League against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Longley here with the Texas Municipal League to voice our opposition to the bill as filed. And I don't know that I've seen the most recent committee substitute, but I do want to say we greatly appreciate you, Representative Bonin, and your staff working with us on it towards better language that works for many of our member cities and hopefully can continue to do that. Just a couple of quick concerns that we have with the language as filed. Number one is that many cities, particularly smaller cities, have one polling place, and usually that's City Hall. One effect of this bill is for those cities that are holding their elections in May, it would require them to use the county election precincts, and county election precincts often aren't drawn up with the city, specifically with the city in mind, so some of those cities would have to have all of a sudden go from one polling place to 3, 4, 5 polling places within the city limits, which could drive up the cost of the election. So that's one of our concerns. The other one is that some cities would be forced to conduct their city elections at polling places that are actually outside the city limits. And in a few somewhat rare circumstances, there's the county election precincts wouldn't have a single polling place within the city limits. And so that's an issue that we think just doesn't really make sense to require city voters to go outside the city limits to vote in a city election. So those are our two primary concerns with the bill, and we've been working with Representative Bonin and hopefully can continue to do so.
Right, Representative Schofield.
So would it alleviate your concern if there was an exception that said that the requirement doesn't apply to a political subdivision that if for its early voting uses the same hours and the same days for all, it doesn't have mobile voting, it doesn't have rolling voting? Because that seems to be what's in the committee sub.
Right, and to some extent it does, although there's part of that language is a little bit confusing to me in that it talks about branch early voting polling places versus the main early voting polling places. And so our concern is for those cities that just have a main early voting polling place and no temporary or permanent branch, would they be encompassed by that exception? And
well, let me read it to you because I sort of glossed over it, but it seems to me that if you only vote at the permanent city hall, that you're good and you're exempted. But I'll read the exception to you. Subsection A, the part that says that you have to use all the dates, does not apply to a political subdivision that conducts early voting by personal appearance at each permanent or temporary branch polling location on the same days and during the same hours as voting is conducted at the main early voting polling place. So it seems if you only use the main place, you don't have to do anything else.
I think I can see that reading. I think there may be another reading of it that just says it's only taking into account those cities that both have a temporary branch and a main branch. And so I think at least for the league and some of our member cities, what they've said is if there could be language specifying that particular exception would include cities that only have the main voting polling place, then it would be very helpful for us.
I can't imagine the judge that would say, if you only have the main polling place, we're going to make you open some temporary runs around it, but thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Chair now recognizes Melissa Brunner with the City of Flatonia and the Texas Municipal Clerks Association against the bill.
Hello, I'm Melissa Brunner. I am City Secretary in Flatonia, and I am a member of the Texas Municipal Clerks Association. I have been a City Secretary in Flatonia for 15 years.
And will you please, I'm sorry.
And I'm in opposition to the bill.
Thank you very much.
And I'm in opposition to the original bill. I have not seen the new one. Flatonia is just under 1,400 people as of the last census. After the first election that was conducted under my tenure, city officials determined that locating the election at City Hall was a better fit for the City of Flatonia elections. Flatonia ISD followed us over, and we have been able to successfully hold elections at Flatonia City Hall council chambers for the last 13 years. This location allows election workers to have direct access to me on Election Day if they have questions about procedure or need any other assistance such as supplies or anything else during Election Day. This also allows both the city and the ISD election workers to begin counting during the day, as there is a private room where they can count. This is not available at the county voting place. The county does not count on site. They transport their ballots to the county seat to be run through the counting machine. All of the city and the Flatonia ISD ballots are paper ballots and are hand counted. If workers need anything from me, I would have to leave my office to travel to the polling location if we do have to have it at the county polling location. My resources to answer any questions that they have are in my office. I would not have easy access to this if we were to have to move it. The City Council of the City of Flatonia and Flatonia ISD Board of Directors has determined that Flatonia City Hall is the best place to hold our elections for our citizens. Why is the county being given the authority to determine where the best place for the city and ISD voters to vote? Allowing cities and other political subdivisions to set their polling locations as part of the election process. There's no need to erode that authority. As I said, I'm speaking to the original bill. I have several examples of different cities in the state, all over the state, of having to go from, say, one to multiple polling locations. We would be more amenable to it if we were allowed to leave everything at our main polling place on Election Day and early voting.
Questions, Representative Schofield?
Just a quick one. This location that you're describing, City Hall or wherever, is that where early voting is conducted?
Early voting is conducted for the city, but not for the school district. They conduct their early voting at the school district.
Okay, so for city elections, this is where early voting is done. So a rule that said that you don't have to go to the county locations if all of your polling locations operate at the same hours as the main polling location, you only have the main polling location.
Yes,
So
that
for your
would be
city
fine,
elections,
but it doesn't discuss on Election Day. Election Day, it seems to be saying that we would have to move to the county polling location, and that is currently not the way that we operate.
yeah, that's not how I read it, but okay. Thank you.
That's how we read it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Chair now recognizes Ruben Longoria with the Texas Association of School Boards against the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ruben Longoria, Texas Association of School Boards. And considering that the representative has laid out a committee substitute, we've had just a brief moment to look over it. So I'd like to change our position from against to on the bill. The concerns we've had have also been raised by the cities that if a voting public is used to the election polling place where it's been for so many years, for us to treat the May election like a November election and have a school board election held outside of the territory because it's convenient for the county does kind of raise the concerns. But it seems by the language introduced in the substitute that we're kind of rolling into that, like for a better term, into that area where we can actually maintain the same polling places. So again, I'd like to continue working, or actually begin working with Representative Bonham on this bill. This was just brought to my attention this morning, so I'll be happy to answer any questions, but that was really our main concern.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much.
All right,
We
thank you.
appreciate your testimony. The chair now recognizes Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office for the bill.
Ed Johnson, Harris County Clerk's Office, testifying for Bill 2027. Yes, this is a problem. The original bill addressed a big problem. I know in Harris County, in a May election, voters have had up to 7 different polling locations they've had to go to on Election Day to vote. All the districts in their area. It's amazing that you would send a voter to 7 different locations on Election Day to try to figure out where to go vote. We need to have some centralized mechanism to do this. And the part that's been added to the bill, doing away with mobile voting, is the best part of the bill yet. There are several bills out there for doing away with mobile voting. Y'all have a big decision on which one is the best and how best to do it, but hopefully y'all pick one of them. This has the school districts in Harris County have abused this mobile voting privilege that it has, and it has a good reason for some counties. There's some small rural counties that are spread out and they only have a select number of voting machines, and they do have to travel from city to city in order to give everybody a chance to vote. But we have school districts in Harris County that will have a November election to elect their board, and that May they'll have a bond election where they're passing billion-dollar bonds, and all of a sudden they have 20 to 30 vans driving around to every school and every sports arena to select their voters. That's just not right. You should be able to give everybody equal access to the polling location. So we're really in support of it for that reason. This would fix a lot of problems.
All right. Any questions, members? No, he said 4. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you want to call him? Tasby? No, he said
Longoria. Mr. Longoria, do you mind coming back up? I apologize. We just want to make certain. The chair now recognizes Ruben Longoria with the Texas Association of School Boards. Can you restate your position on the bill, please?
Yes, sir.
Restate your entire.
Ruben Longoria, Assistant Director for Government Relations, the Texas Association of School Boards, and here to testify on House Bill 2027.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're
we
welcome.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 2027? None. The chair recognizes Representative Bonin to close on House Bill 2027.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members, I'm glad this was a lot less contentious than cell phones. All joking aside, the committee sub, just to be clear, does allow for any location, not just a county precinct location, so long as that's a consistent, maintained location. So if you're in Flatonia and you're using City Hall and you're going to use it throughout all of early voting and on Election Day, then I think that's fantastic. And that's the point, is to have consistency and reliability for voters. You also heard the issue of co-location come up. This is another huge issue where you may have voters that they go to vote, but what they don't know is that there are multiple elections taking place and they can't vote in each election in one given location. So the better we're able to synchronize those, I think that's better for the democratic process. I don't know that this legislation will fully solve that problem, but I do think it will be a step in the right direction toward addressing that. And finally, I have to mention, too, that over the weekend I've had conversations with the mayor and the mayor pro tem of my hometown of Friendswood. We do all our municipal elections at City Hall, And I probably won't go back home if we don't get this right, because that's the way that we want it to be. It's not to require them to expand their locations and add to their costs, but to maintain uniform and consistent polling places, for these jurisdictions. I appreciate all those who testified and expressed a desire to continue working with me on this to get it right, so that the language does actually reflect the intent that has been shared with you today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions, and otherwise I close.
Any other questions, members? Thank you, Dr. Bonin. The chair
Thank you.
withdraws the substitute to House Bill 2027, and House Bill 2027 will be left pending at this time. All right, members, we're going to go back. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 1327. This is Representative Gallindo's bill that we were about to consider a few minutes ago. And Representative Reynolds offers a substitute to House Bill 1327, and the chair calls Representative Gallindo to explain the committee substitute to House Bill 1327. And I apologize, Representative, for that earlier.
No problem.
Wait, we just wanted to make sure we were absolutely right.
Sure.
Please proceed.
Thank you. The intent of this bill is not to put everyone up for recall, but to give voters the ability to use recall if there is severe mismanagement of a school district at the expense of educating our kids. In fact, the bill lays out a very detailed recall process. To order a recall, there must be a petition naming just one trustee. To recall more than one member, there must be separate petitions for each trustee. A petition must have signatures that amount to at least 10% of the votes cast in the most recent general election for trustees, and all the signatures must be from registered voters in the district. Additionally, these signatures must be collected after the 180th day of the trustee's term and not 90 days before the petition is to be submitted, which they have been on the board for at least 2 years. These steps are added to ensure that the process is not abused. However, the bill before the committee today is very much a work in progress. As I have been trying to find a suitable trigger for such a recall election, I have tried to find something that would be a result of the board's discretionary actions. In the committee substitute for this bill, I am working on making academic accreditation, which is determined by the TEA based on a combination of academic accountability and financial accountability measures, the recall trigger. So if the accreditation of a school district drops and is at risk, then rather than shutting down a district as would result from this process, I believe we should enable our voters to be able to change the district's management. A drop in a district's accreditation is a serious concern, and while there is an election every 2 years, that is too long when we're talking about fixing a failing school. But by that point, a great disservice has already been done to our children, and this recall option would give parents a way to act before it is too late. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to reserve the right to close, and I'm here for any questions.
All right. Any questions, members? All right. Thank you very much. We will call you back up to close. The chair recognizes Karen Freeman from the Northside ISD from Barrett County, wishing to speak against the bill.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Karen Freeman, School Board Trustee, representing Northside ISD in Barrett County and the Texas Association of School Boards, and quite honestly myself as a voter, testifying in opposition to the substitute HB 1327. HB 1327 is a major change in the process to remove a trustee from office by initiative and referendum that would mandate a school district to conduct a recall election. The reason for the recall election would be based on the school district's accreditation status being lowered by the Commissioner of Education. The matrix for which a school district moves a level in accreditation is complex and composed of multiple measures in academic and financial accountability. Some of these include...
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you
Yes,
back
sir.
up one moment? Let me just check on something real quick.
Sure.
Okay, ma'am, can you start over? And I'm sorry, I'm backing up. Start over and testifying on the bill, and because you're testifying on the bill, not on the committee substitute. And you testified, you registered that you were against the bill, and that's what we need you to testify, that you're against the bill.
I am I am Karen Freeman, School Board Trustee, representing Northside ISD in Bexar County and the Texas Association of School Boards, testifying against House Bill 1327.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Again, it represents a major change in the process to remove a trustee from office by initiative and referendum that would mandate a school district to conduct a recall election. The reason for the recall election would be based on the school district's accreditation status being lowered by the Commissioner of Education. The matrix for which a school district moves a level in accreditation is complex and composed of multiple measures in academic and financial accountability. These include students' performance and standardized testing, financial accountability, state and federal required reporting on the public education information management system, graduation rates, programs for special populations, none of which would be the fault of one individual school board trustee. This bill would require the recall election of trustees who have at least 2 years' experience on the board. For a trustee that is serving a 3-year term, that means the district would have to spend additional money on a recall election when the public can vote that trustee out of office in the next uniform election. In my school district, a single-member district election costs around $30,000. There appears to me an assumption that a recall election would bring about a better outcome for the school district, however that would be defined, and the removal brought about by such a small minority as 10% of the registered voters is not able to ensure that. Current law affords a community to remove a sitting board member from office. Texas school board members are subject to 2 forms of involuntary removal from public office: quo warranto procedure and removal by petition and trial. A quo warranto proceeding could be initiated by the Attorney General or the county or district attorney of the proper county if the trustee unlawfully holds the office or performs or allows an act that causes forfeiture of the office. Removal by petition and trial is already authorized by Chapter 87 of the Local Government Code. Current law sets up a procedure to remove a local elected official, including a school board trustee, for incompetency, official misconduct, intoxication, or conviction of a felony or a misdemeanor involving official misconduct. Any resident of the county may initiate the removal proceedings by filing a petition with the district court. The current election process is what puts you and me into office, and it's also the process that removes us from office by the electorate. Recall elections, as defined by this bill, simply allow a do-over because a specific constituency is not pleased with a certain elected official. Though there is no proof required that a trustee was responsible for the accreditation standard being lowered, the process itself would allow the voter to assume such. Therefore, I ask that the members of this committee oppose H. Bill 1327. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have at this time.
Representative Schofield.
I have one. You seem to have seen or be aware of the committee sub, which I'm just seeing now, that has the accreditation stuff in it.
Yes, sir.
I'm presuming your district had a lowering of its accreditation standard?
No, sir.
You did not?
No, sir, that's,
Okay.
that's not at all. I have talked with the Representative Galindo and had been familiar with the substitute bill.
So would the bill even apply to your district?
No, sir. No, sir, this bill would not apply to my school district. I'm testifying for at myself as a school board trustee, as in Northside ISD and part of the Texas Association of School Boards. There are school districts in the state of Texas that do have some accreditation, different accreditation statuses. I do have those for you, but I do know that TEA is TEA still here? I know that they're thinking about providing testimony. I would leave that to TEA, or I could enumerate the number of school districts and charter school districts that do have accreditation issues.
So I'm kind of confused. If your district doesn't have an accreditation problem,
that's correct.
Why are you worried about Representative Galindo's bill?
Because this allows for a recall of school board trustees on what I believe is a basis that school board trustees individually do not have any influence on any one of the pieces that lower an accreditation for any specific school district. So reality is, it hurts my integrity as a school board trustee, because I do represent school board trustees in the entire state. And integrity of the office itself.
Aren't you all the ones that manage the district? I mean, I would assume if my child's district got a lowering of accreditation, I would want that rectified. So who do I hold responsible?
As a school board trustee, we do not have any power individually. That is a power of the entire board, working with the staff of an individual school district. For instance, I believe that financial accountability in a school district, as defined by School First, some of that relates to the property values in my school district. Am I responsible for that? Maybe not. There's a large matrix involved regarding the accreditation status. It's not simple. It's not one item. It's not black and white. I can provide that matrix for you.
So as a parent, my only recourse is to wait till the person's term is over and get rid of them then?
No, sir. We do have in place. We have engagement. People can come before a school district at any time and talk about that. And this particular bill implies that as a school board trustee, if my school district were in trouble, that I would not be concerned about that. There are outside influences such as funding and various things that can influence the accreditation of a specific school district. And I'm in tune to that and certainly willing to improve that. And I think most school board trustees work for the purpose of educating children. I mean, we all work very hard to ensure that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Members, any other questions? Representative Fallon?
Yeah, just a kind of questions and comments for you.
Sure.
Whenever we talk about anything related to school funding and ISDs and things like that, I do hear that played a little bit too much. We're doing it for the children. We're all doing it for the children.
Sure.
Or I think, so I think I would just caution you to use it because sometimes you make a strong case and it kind of weakens it because it's just an overused phrase that we hear. Because, nobody wants children to go uneducated because they're clearly our future and the country will fall apart. Coming off of city council years ago, we had in our city charter a provision that would allow for recall elections. Now, nobody that's elected wants to be recalled, but I liked that provision in it because we ultimately answer to the people and to the taxpayers. And although I clearly didn't want to be recalled and no one else did, I'm glad it was in there. And it was a pretty hard and high burden because to get that many people to get involved and to get the requisite number of signatures, it's a very rare event. Wouldn't you agree? It doesn't seem to happen that often, at least where I'm from.
I am not familiar with any particular recall elections in my specific area. I do know that this particular bill would require a petition of a mere 10% of the registered voters, and that could be a constituency that, again, for some personal reason, would like the removal of a school board trustee. This particular bill also ties the removal of a school board trustee to the lowering of a level in accreditation standards, of which one specific school board trustee is not responsible for. Could be a board majority, it could be the entire board. Not one particular specific school board trustee is responsible for lowering the accreditation of a school district.
Mm-hmm. I think that if there's that big of a groundswell, then it's probably a good idea. For instance, I'll give you an example. In Wisconsin, Governor Walker was sentenced, subject to a recall. I personally wouldn't have voted to recall him. I thought, my worldview was he was doing a good job. There's other people that didn't think so. But there was such a groundswell in Wisconsin that I'm actually, again, glad that they had that means to do it. And he survived it and they moved on. I think it's such a rare occurrence that if the people get their pitchforks and their torches out, generally speaking, I think it's a good idea because to get this 10%, it takes a lot for people to do that. So I just wanted to respectfully, kind of make that point and kind of disagree with coming in from a different angle. But thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party for the bill.
I'm Alan Vera. I'm testifying for myself this time. The Harris County Republican Party has no position on this bill.
Thank you, sir.
I favor HB 1327. And by the way, from January through May of 2012, I traveled to Wisconsin constantly, training election observers to work the recall election of Governor Walker. I'm totally in favor of any number of bills that allow citizens to recall elected officials at any level. I think accountability is critical, and the citizens of Texas deserve it. In this particular case, there are only two changes I'd recommend that the committee consider in the bill currently before you. One, I would consider a way to shorten the time required to complete the entire recall process. In an honest effort to be fair and realistic, the bill does drag out considerably to the point where the bill has to mention several times that if the trustee's term ends before this process is completed, the bill goes away or the action is completed. I will also consider adding a provision that the recall trustee would not be eligible to run again for that position for a specific number of years following the recall if successful. Today, school board elections are decided by vendor-funded political action committees that pour big money into electing trustee tickets to the school board. Those trustees generally favor projects that put money into the vendors' pockets. If you don't have the prohibition against rerunning, the trustee will simply be reincorporated into a PAC-backed ticket and will slide right back in on the next round. Please amend in advance HB 1327.
All right, Mr. Vera, thank you. Just so you know, and we can correct this, you wrote in the card that you're representing the Harris County Republican Party and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you're testifying on behalf of yourself and not the Harris
From
County
myself
Republican
only
Party.
on this bill.
Okay. But be sure when you register outside
Thank
that
you.
don't put both like you did this time. Why don't we re-register you?
Sure.
Just to make certain that we're correct.
Be happy to. Any questions?
If we re-register him right now, if we re-register him, he's going to be registered twice.
Okay.
So
Let's
I will have to.
let's back up and we're going to have to redo your testimony. So make sure that you're registered correctly because, like I said,
sir.
in our system, you're registered as both. So, so why don't we not ask questions on this? Let me withdraw your testimony. Want you register correctly, and then we'll call you back up again so you can register properly. Thank you. And in the meantime, we'll call up the chair will recognize Colleen Vera on behalf of herself testifying against the bill.
Hi, my name is Colleen Vera. I'm here representing myself. I didn't know there was going to be a committee substitute, so I registered against because it didn't have an academic component. Now that it does, I guess I'm on this bill instead of against.
All right. Let's
I'm
hold off on
sorry.
your testimony and why don't you go talk to the clerks.
Okay,
And
thank
we'll
you.
bring you back up as well so we do this correctly. The chair now calls Al Areola with the South San Antonio Chamber of Commerce for the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your time. My name is Al Areola. I'm the President and CEO of the South San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, speaking in support of House Bill 1327. Local governance and control is a cornerstone of democracy and freedom. The ability to intimately monitor and engage in civic dialogue often needs enhancements to empower underrepresented populations. Currently, the autonomy given to school districts gives unfortunate free rein and questionable actions throughout their elected term. With the exception of being removed from office when committing a state jail crime, there is currently little remedy to keep underperforming school district leadership to account. So in essence, we have to wait for the court of law to process and not the court of public opinion. School board members play a critical role in our neighborhoods, and their decisions affect the daily lives of children. Public education taxes carry the largest price tag for businesses and individuals in their districts. However, when those resources are mismanaged, these parents and voters have sparse remedies to correct this behavior. As it stands, the lowest voter turnout for elections tends to be when state and federal elections are not in the running, which tends to polarize school district elections to elect candidates based on popularity and not policy decisions. House Bill 1327 gives voters the ability to recall school board members for mismanagement that affects the quality of education for our children. The state has determined that the accreditation status of a school district is the appropriate measurement for performance. It is important that we empower the electorate to hold their leadership to this same standard. School board governance and improving public education has been a focus of our Chamber of Commerce because mismanagement and perceived distinctions negatively affect economic development. In South San Antonio, we have seen some great companies with good paying jobs open up, but the employees would rather live on the other side of town where the kids attend better schools and don't see consistent drama with their board members. We would like for our parents to have the same confidence that they live on while living on the south side, and that their kids will have the same quality schools and stellar governance that other sides of towns offer. I thank you, and I lend the floor back. And any questions?
Any questions, members?
Sorry.
No, you're all good. You did
Thanks.
great. Thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony. The chair now recognizes. Right. Colleen Vera, on behalf of herself, is speaking on the bill.
Thank y'all for making that correction.
Sure.
My name is Colleen Vera. I'm representing myself, and I'm testifying on House Bill 1327. And from what I hear, I really like and support the committee substitute. I taught in Texas Public Schools for 30 years. When I read the original bill, my blood boiled because it did not have an academic component. If the academic component is in the committee substitute, I highly support that. It's about time that with the teachers being held accountable, that the school board be held accountable too. We have schools failing academically all over our state. If the bill actually would allow for board members to be recalled if the district's academic rating decreased during the member's tenure, there'd be no telling how fast we'd see schools turn around. Instead of school board members going to lunch with construction vendors and taking expensive TASB training trips and learning about the team of 8 to exclusive hotels and ordering $50 room service breakfast, they'd actually work to improve the performance of the schools. And that's our goal in the first place, is to educate the kids. So I think it's a great bill. I think it also help school districts want to have more voters participating in the election, because if I read it correctly, the recall is using 10% of the number of voters who actually voted in that election, not registered voters. And that would be awesome, because then the school boards would start actually wanting more voters, and it would be awesome for us because then we'd actually know when the elections were, and we'd actually be able to participate more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for helping us with that. The chair now recognizes Alan Vera, who will be testifying on behalf of himself for the bill.
Alan Vera testifying on behalf of myself in favor of HB 1327. I'm totally in favor of any number of bills that would allow recall of elected officials at every level across the state of Texas. I think accountability of voters is a good thing. There are only 2 changes I'd recommend the committee consider to the bill as currently written. One, I'd consider ways to accelerate or shorten the apparent time required to complete the recall. In an honest effort to be fair and realistic, the bill drags out the process considerably to the point where the bill has to mention several times that if the trustee's term expires while the recall process is still in process, then the recall process is abandoned. I'd also consider adding a provision that the recalled trustee would not be eligible to run again for that position or any trustee position of the same school district for a certain number of years following a successful recall. Today, school board elections are decided by vendor-funded political action committees that pour big money into electing tickets of trustees that favor expansion projects that benefit the vendors themselves. If you don't have this prohibition against rerunning, that trustee will simply be reincorporated into a PAC-backed ticket and will slide right back in. Please advance with these amendments, HB 1327.
Any questions, members? Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience. The chair now recognizes John Oldham, Texas Association of Election Administrators, on the bill.
Thank you, sir. John Oldham, President, Texas Association of Election Administrators, speaking to House Bill 1327.
Speaking on for or against?
On.
Thank you.
Yes. We certainly don't want to get involved in this petition or recall or initiative issue. That's not our job. Our job is to conduct elections. But certainly we have some concerns which maybe have been addressed in the committee substitute, but those concerns are the election calendar. And as, for example, all the members of our association, which are election administrators, if we are asked by a school district to conduct an election on their behalf, we have to do so. And if the calendar is such that that 62nd day following the approval of the petition happens to fall on the Saturday before a November election, we have a huge problem in terms of logistics, in terms of equipment. And so we would like to see, obviously we'd like to see the substitute language, but we would also like to urge some language that would prohibit this election taking place within the calendar of a regularly scheduled election.
Great. Thank you. Any questions, members? No? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now calls Dana DeBeauvoir of the County Clerk's Legislative Commission against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dana DeBeauvoir for County Clerks, and I'm here to testify against House Bill 1327. For the members of the committee and for Representative Galindo, we county clerks do not have a dog in this hunt, in the sense that we are not commenting on initiative and referendum, nor do we have any preference for how school board members are treated in terms of their elections. The only thing we are concerned about is the election date and the election calendar. So with that said, and exactly what John Oldham just testified to, we would appreciate language added to the bill that says whatever date. Right now the bill calls for any date may be set as an election date, and that is very problematic. What we would like to do is ask that that date not be set within a certain time frame. Between 60 and 90 days is a reasonable amount of any election date that is regularly scheduled. And to help with that, the language of the bill should be probably 90 days is the easiest thing to do because you have to deal with by-mail ballots. And to help with that, we would offer the election calendar that y'all have all been given, but we would ask the representative if he would consider just that aspect. We're only worried about the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Schofield does have some questions.
Ms. DeBeauvoir,
ma'am,
is there a time on the calendar that isn't within 90 days of an election? Somebody has testified they had 13 in the last calendar year.
Yeah. We would say that special elections are not considered uniform dates, so that would not be the case. You're referring to Jackie Callan in Bexar County, who's had a rough go. Those are special exceptions and are not considered uniform dates.
But if Mr. Galindo followed your advice and put in something about 60 or 90 days, he'd have effective times when he could hold his election?
Absolutely, because it would be November and May, and then in even years it would be November, May, and the primary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Keith Ingram with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Keith Ingram, Texas Secretary of State's office, and we are here on House Bill 1327.
Any questions, members?
Could I just say a word?
Sure, absolutely. I apologize.
I haven't seen the committee substitute, so I don't know if the process is still the same. But the process as it is in that bill, the secretary or acting secretary, if it's a recall petition, has to start simultaneously reviewing the petition and submitting it to the district court for determination. And that seems like it might be counterproductive. It seems like you should finish the petition review, make sure you've actually got a live petition before you bother a district court with it. So that's the only thing I would have to say.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now calls Karen Freeman with the Northside ISD, who's against the bill. It's the same. She did. Ms. Freeman, you registered twice, so we need you to come up a second time and restate your name and the fact that you're against the bill and what the bill number is, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry. I did register twice because when the machine acted like it didn't.
Just
take
restate
it the first
everything
time.
and you'll be fine.
Okay. I'm Karen Freeman, school board trustee representing Northside ISD in Bexar County and the Texas Association of School Boards testifying against House Bill 1327.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, members? No. Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 1327? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Galindo to close on House Bill 1327.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. We often hear that the government closest to the people governs best and affects them the most. I believe that we should work to ensure that this is the case because our school boards in particular carry a heavy burden educating our children. When we see school boards constantly in the papers for all the wrong reasons, voters and parents begin to lose faith in their local government and wish to act. My intent with this bill is to give parents and voters stronger ways to keep their school boards accountable based on substantive issues rather than just name ID, especially when the district is being mismanaged at the expense of our children's education. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request favorable consideration by this committee, and I would like to close on HB 1327.
Great. Thank you very much, Representative. The chair withdraws a substitute to House Bill 1327, and House Bill 1327 will be left pending at this time. The bill that won't die. The chair needs to lay out again House Bill 1327 for consideration and recognize Representative Galindo to explain the bill. Representative Reynolds offers a substitute to House Bill 1327. And the chair calls Representative Galindo to explain to the committee the substitute for House Bill 1327. Representative Galindo, you do not need to explain the entire bill again. We need to go back to a certain testimony on it, so you don't have to say a thing.
Okay.
But thank you for coming back up to lay the bill out.
I was ready.
Don't leave. This is never going to end. You're right, exactly. The chair needs to recognize Mr. Alan Vera, who testified on behalf of himself and the Harris County Republican Party.
Just myself.
Okay. I got it. So because you had testified, because you had written down that you were for the Harris County Republican Party and yourself, and you were testifying on the bill, you've testified now for yourself. We need to testify on behalf of the Harris County Republican Party, whether they're on, for, or against the bill. So you both have to be on.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party, testifying on the bill.
Very good. And come back and testify for yourself that you're on the bill.
Alan Vera, testifying for myself on the bill.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions, members, for anybody? All right. The chair recognizes Representative Galindo to close on House Bill 1327. Say that you close.
I'm here to close.
Thank you very much. The chair withdraws the substitute to House Bill 1327. House Bill 1327 will be left pending at this time and forever. All right. The chair now lays out House Bill 1645 for consideration and recognizes Representative Gutierrez to explain this bill. Thank you very much, Representative Gutierrez, for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is for the kids. Representative Fallon, this one's for the kids. So House Bill 1645 amends the election code to require the Secretary of State to select to participate in the countywide polling place program for each county that has a population of more than 1.5 million, in which more than 75% of the population lives in a single municipality. The bill makes the requirement that the Commissioner's Court of a county that desires to participate in a countywide polling place program hold a public hearing unless the county has previously held a public hearing on the county's participation. The greatest benefit would be that a voter can go to any polling place in the county and vote regardless of where they live, which is the same process the county uses during early voting. This is not an unfunded mandate for the county. There is no fiscal note. This will encourage more voter participation in the voting process. It costs nothing and hopefully will encourage more participation in our democracy. And so thank you, members, with that. I reserve the right to close, and we'll see who wants to testify.
Any questions, members?
Mr. Gutierrez, I have a concern about these countywide polling locations.
I got to Representative Schofield. That's
I have one. We've been doing this for the last several sessions. My big concern is this: that for roughly 2 weeks, folks who want to vote at any location have the opportunity to do that, and they can vote throughout Bexar County. The only time they can vote in their neighborhood is on Election Day, and if we do away with that, then there's never the opportunity to do that. That the folks who want to vote somewhere have the 2 weeks to do it, and then on Election Day, it's the same thing. And the folks that want to vote in their neighborhood, particularly my older voters, never get that opportunity. Is that something we're just going to do away with forever when we get rid of precincts? I mean, is that where we're heading?
You know, Representative, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the county to decide where their polling sites are going to be. Maybe they keep the same polling locations. Maybe in order to save money, they consolidate some. It's a very good point. At the end of the day, I think that you'll get more voter participation by doing all of those things, and hopefully they keep those voting places open that you're talking about, the individual precincts. But I think that this gives counties flexibility. Hopefully they measure those kinds of concerns that you might have, but those are for people that have way more electoral qualifications than myself. But I think that it is a good bill in the sense that it increases voter participation in that sense.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party, who's against the bill.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying against House Bill 1645. I'm afraid what we have here is a situation where, at least for Harris County, we're trying to fix something that's not broken. Thanks to the successive elections of a series of smart, conscientious, efficiency-minded county clerks, we have among the most efficient and effective election processes in the state. Further, because we do maintain precinct-level voting, we sustain the engagement of ordinary citizens in the election process. It's critical. Our use of geographically dispersed early voting locations available to all voters registered anywhere in the county, combined with precinct-level voting on Election Day, gives us the best of both worlds. For the record, early voting in Harris County now makes up 66% of all ballots cast. But that still leaves 34% of the voters who prefer to vote in their precincts on Election Day. The elderly, the disabled, all those who prefer to vote in person have the convenience of going to a very nearby voting location to cast a ballot in person. That's critical. My concern, representing the party, is that it's usually centralized government advocates that try to consistently fix what's not broken. If some counties want a centralized voting system, great. Let them pursue that path. But if other counties have a proven system that consistently delivers accurate polling results with optimal convenience for voters of all stages in their lives, please leave it alone. Unless there are serious problems that need to be fixed, leave each county to determine what works best for the voters of that county. Don't fix what's not broken. Please don't let HB 1645 go any farther.
All right. Questions, members? No questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Glenn Maxey, the Texas Democrat Party, for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democratic Party, and we're in support of House Bill 1645. Is that right? Yes. we have taken positions as if we looked at the 40 or so counties around the state who are doing voting centers, that this has, in most cases, eliminated people having provisional ballots that are not counted because all people are able to be in the right precinct on Election Day. This has now been done in major urban counties and very small counties and suburban counties, and it's worked beautifully everywhere. The bill allows, when voting centers go into place, that they must have at least 60% of the original precincts still in existence. We cheer on the counties who have done voting centers and have not eliminated any polling places unless they were redundant, i.e. just right across the street from each other. In Travis County, that has happened, and we've also kept the early voting locations open on Election Day, so people have the best of all worlds. And this bill, quite frankly, just to clear the record, I think is bracketed only for Bexar County.
All right, any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes George Hammerline with the Harris County Clerk's Office against the bill.
Good evening. My name is George Hammerline. I'm with the Harris County Clerk's Office, and I was here against HB 1645. We just basically philosophically don't like the legislature deciding what's best for a county. We think if the Bexar County Elections EA office gets together with their commissioner's court and decide that's the best course for them, then they're free to do that, and we encourage that. But we just we think there's enough mandates on people that run elections without the legislature telling them where and how to put their election machines in. Thanks.
Questions, members? Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes Keith Ingram with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Keith Ingram, Texas Secretary of State's office. We are here testifying on House Bill 1645. There are requirements in 43007 of the Election Code, technology requirements for participating in the countywide polling place program, and I don't know why Bexar County has not elected to ask to be a participant in the past, but it could be that they need to buy some equipment in order to qualify, and so I just don't know. They're perfectly able to ask to participate now. We have not filled up the 6 large county slots in any election that I've been a part of since I've been in the office for 3 years.
Any questions, members? Oh, thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 1645? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Gutierrez to close on House Bill 1645.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As an impassioned lover of centralized government, I would also argue that this bill does give a lot of local control, which is also important to folks on both sides of the aisle. I don't want to get into a committee substitute, but there might be some issues that'll resolve those things, those concerns that folks had. In addition, and lastly, I would argue that this bracket is really for Bexar County, and I hope that it doesn't pull in Houston. It may, but can't help that. But at any rate, thank you very much, and with that, I close.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Chair, believe House Bill 1645 will be left pending at this time. Thank you very much, Representative Gutierrez, for your patience. The chair now lays out HJR 86 for consideration and recognize Representative Galindo to explain his bill.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you again for letting me lay out this HJR 86. Local government, particularly our school boards, are the closest level of government to the people and affects our daily lives more than any other form of government. Unfortunately, this is also where citizens tend to be less engaged and down-ballot voter participation is lowest, usually based on name ID alone. In many cases, this low level of participation and community engagement leads to little accountability for our school board members. And unlike other local and county officials, there aren't any school districts that have term limits or any other restrictions. This leads to a situation in which, in majority of cases, name ID alone or whoever has the most memorable or biggest yard signs determines the outcome of leadership for our children due to this lack of voter engagement. Under Chapter 87 Local Government Code, a county official, including school board trustees, can currently be removed from office as a result of incompetency, official misconduct, or intoxication on or off duty caused by drinking an alcoholic beverage. However, this chapter leaves the removal process entirely to a single individual in the affected county, a district judge. While there are many cases where the grounds for removal would be painfully obvious to a judge, I believe that voters and parents should have the ability to hold their elected trustees accountable for their actions. This joint resolution is one of my priorities because without it, we as a legislator do not even have the ability to pass bills that would allow for our constituents to hold local officials accountable through a recall election. Additionally, should this joint resolution pass, it would simply ask the voters to decide in a statewide election whether or not they believe they should have recalls as a means to hold school board members accountable. The reason I am focusing on school board members as opposed to other local officials is because they are the ones who most directly affect the education of our children. All elected officials have a unique role in their community, but I do believe that we as parents entrust a lot of responsibility in our school board trustees and should be able to hold them accountable for actions that may hurt our schools. With that, I am available for any questions this committee may have, and I reserve the right to close.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you.
The chair calls Keith Ingram testifying on the bill.
Keith Ingram, Texas Secretary of State's office, here to testify on HJR 86. Take any questions if you've got them.
Any questions, members? No questions. Thank you very much for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against HJR 86? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Galindo to close on HJR 86.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and other committee members, my intent with this joint resolution is to ensure that concerned parents, students, and community members have recall elections as another means by which they can hold school board members accountable. Of course, there is a chance every 2 years for the voters to change the composition of the school board, but given that we are talking about the governance and management of our schools, I think it is important that we ensure these boards are operating in the most ethical and efficient way possible. In passing this joint resolution, voters will be given a choice in a statewide election whether or not they believe that recall elections are necessary. I have faith that our constituents and voters are best equipped to make these decisions for their local communities, and I ask for favorable consideration by this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that, I close on HJR 86.
Thank you very much, and we will leave HJR 86 will be left pending at this time. Thank you very much, Representative Galindo. Great job, and thank you for your patience today. That's for the kids. The chair now lays out House Bill 2050. For consideration, and recognizes Representative Israel to explain the bill. You can do it here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just found out a few minutes ago my friend Representative Rodriguez was not able to do this, but this is a bill that has support from both the Republican and the Democratic parties. This is House Bill 2050, and this would ensure that voter records accurately reflect how each voter participated in an election. Specifically, we'd like to know whether they voted in person, by mail, or on election day. This is similar to, I think, the bill that you have. So interested parties assert that some election clerks around the state routinely submit voter records that do not accurately demonstrate how a person voted. This is not a new requirement. Clerks are required to upload data for the Secretary of State already. This is merely a reclassification of how that data is uploaded. This bill would save those clerks time and money by having them upload the data correctly the first time. This bill has no fiscal note, and we have some witnesses who can help describe some of the real-world impacts that we are seeing.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Great, thank you. The chair recognizes Glenn Maxey from the Texas Democrat Party to speak for the bill.
Glenn Maxey, Texas Democratic Party, in support of House Bill 2050. I just want to let everybody know that Representative Rodriguez was my chief of staff, and he replaced me in the legislature. And if I'm ever here testifying against one of his bills, he will no longer be a state rep.
Disclaimer so noted.
This bill is very simple. The clerks after an election are required to put the data back into the thing that people voted. In Texas, the people who work in elections like to know whether people voted on election day, or they voted early, or they voted by mail. This simply says, this is not a new requirement, it just simply says put it up in the three methodologies or the three categories. Just to give you know, in 2014 general election, 163 counties followed the parameters of this bill, 91 did not. So if any clerks stand up today and say we're causing them to do extra work, this is what happens. Right now there are 91 open records requests of the 91 counties to send the Democratic Party a list of the mail ballot voters. Because right now they upload mail ballot in the same category as early. They don't differentiate. I expect that they will get 91 open records requests from the Republican Party of Texas or their vendor, and any of a half dozen people who maintain statewide or local databases are asking for the same information. So if they just do it according to this bill, all of those open records requests go away because we will get the information straight from the Secretary of State's file.
Right.
This saves them time and effort.
Any questions, members? Representative Israel?
I do. Mr. Maxey, what are some of the larger counties that are not participating right now? Or are they not any larger counties?
Almost every large county has electronic kinds of things. I don't know that there's very many large counties. These are mostly mid-sized and small counties that just upload the mail ballots as early voters, and you can't just, so we have to do an open records to go get that list.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a list they already have. They just export it and send it to us. They could have uploaded it in the first place. And
got it.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office, who's testifying for the bill.
Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office, testifying for Bill 2050. Everything that Glenn Maxey just said, this would cut out a tremendous number of phone calls that our Open Record Department receives asking, isn't that public information? Shouldn't we be giving that out? Because all the large counties give this out, and we get involved in races that, you know, touch other smaller counties, and for some reason they don't want to give it out. So this would be a great thing and would actually cut down on a lot of the phone calls we receive.
Great. Any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Keith Ingram with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Keith Ingram, Texas Secretary of State's Elections Division, here to testify on House Bill 2050. And what Glenn Maxey said is correct. This has been the law of the 2011 legislature. 82nd legislature passed this law requiring counties to report voting history to us. The categories for all of these things already exist. This just would require the counties to use them instead of lumping it all in as early voting.
Great. Representative Schofield?
Technologically, is there any reason any of the counties that aren't doing it right now can't do it right now?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? No, thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify for or against or on House Bill 2050? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Israel to close on House Bill 2050.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Thank you. House Bill 2050 will be left pending at this time. The chair now lays out House Bill 1026 for consideration. I recognize Representative Thompson to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. This bill is simply to allow a trained county employee to be a tabulation supervisor. The tabulation supervisor at a central counting station must meet the qualifications of a precinct election judge, which includes being a registered voter of the political subdivision that is holding the election. This restriction was established when most entities conducted separate elections. Many political subdivisions within a county now contract with the county to conduct their elections. This is usually done to access the county's voting system. The county owns the equipment, knows how to operate the voting and tabulating equipment, and there are only certain employees that have the knowledge to process the tabulating. We are paying a person who has no idea of what is taking place or how the equipment works to show up and just watch. For some elections, there may be 3 or 4 tabulation supervisors that are just registered voters in the 4 cities holding the runoff election, and none of them have any knowledge of the voting system. This is a waste of money. A trained county employee still has to do the tabulating. Vice Chairman Goldman, a scenario for Tarrant County. The city of Fort Worth is hosting an election, and the elections administrator staff all reside in Benbrook. The city of Fort Worth would have to pay a tabulation supervisor who lived in Fort Worth to supervise the Benbrook employees, regardless of their qualifications or experience with the complicated voting machines. House Bill 1026 allows an employee of a political subdivision that adopts or owns the voting system in use at the election to be appointed as the tabulation supervisor if they are a registered voter in the county rather than the contracting political subdivision. I believe there's a couple of people here to testify, and I reserve the right to close.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you, Representative Thompson. The chair recognizes Janice Evans with the Texas County and District Clerks Association testifying for the bill.
Janice Evans, Elections Director, Missouri County Elections, here testifying for Bill 1026 for the County and District Clerks Association. And I want to thank Representative Thompson for introducing this bill. We're the ones that asked for it. I had an election last June. I had 4 people sitting there that had no clue what was going on. We pay them for, to attend there. That, this bill is catching up with the electronic times. Before, the tabulation supervisor was a person who helped count, was in charge of the paper ballots. It's not that easy anymore. I can't even tabulate. There are certain people that are taught to do that. All we ask is that this bill be considered and passed so that it can catch the elections up with the electronic age of the voting equipment using.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? No. Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Bill Fairbrother with the TRCCA Legislative Chair for the bill.
Bill Fairbrother, Texas Republican County Chairman's Association, testifying for House Bill 1026. We support it. Thank you.
Excellent. Best testimony of the day. Any questions, members? No. The chair now recognizes Ashley Fisher with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Hi, Ashley Fisher from the Secretary of State's office testifying on the bill, House Bill 1026, if you guys have any questions.
Any questions, members? Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. The chair now recognizes George Hammerline with the Harris County Clerk's office for the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is George Hammerline with the Harris County Clerk's Office, here to support HB 1026, and in the spirit of everything else, we strongly support the bill and entertain any questions.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes John Oldham, the Texas Association of Election Administrators, testifying for the bill.
Thank you, sir. John Oldham, President, Texas Association of Election Administrators, speaking for House Bill 1026. This bill makes perfect sense, and we would urge you to vote it out of committee.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that testimony. Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for or against or on House Bill 1026? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Thompson to close on House Bill 1026.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, thank you for your time and consideration. I respectfully request that House Bill 1026 be voted favorably out of committee and sent to local and consent calendars. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. House Bill 1026 will be left pending at this time. The chair now lays out House Bill 1615 for consideration and recognizes Representative Fallon to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. You've often heard that you're saving the best for last. Well, today we save the second to last for the best for second to last. But anyhow, Mr. Chair, members, House Bill 1615 is a simple bill, and it's a wonderful bill, and I'd encourage you all to co-author this bill. What we're looking at is equity in elections, and this absolutely is not a partisan issue at all. And I think fair-minded people like equal opportunity to election and polling sites. We need fair elections, or we don't have a true democracy. And what we want to do in Election day voting is rather easy, because Election day, if you go and vote, you know your polling location is going to be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that's the way we do it in Texas. Early voting sites, because we have 12 days, it gets a little bit more complex. And I experienced when I was serving in a local capacity, it wasn't our city, but it was one neighboring, and I have a lot of friends over there, and they were complaining about the fact that, well, in one, let's just say, more affluent area, their early voting site was open the entire time. And in the other side of the district, in this case, there just happened to be their polling site for early voting was closed on Saturday, and a couple of days it was closed on at 5 o'clock and not 7 like the other one. So you can kind of put your thumb on the scale. And that's what we really want to avoid. And you don't want to have situations where, it would be very unfair if we had an election and said, like in a November election, we're going to only put these early voting sites in places that we feel people are going to vote our way. Or we're going to give 4 over here in this side that may be a little bluer, and 4 over here on this side that's a little redder, but we're going to leave the red sides open longer or the blue sides open longer. And what this bill says is, look, what we're going to do is this. If you have more than 5 polling sites in a given election, so if you have less than that, and you're talking a small election, this bill doesn't even affect you, because you need some flexibility. If you have 5 or more early voting sites, they need to be open the entire time. Or if the central location closes, say, on Saturday, then they all need to close on Saturday. We need uniformity. But we do want to also allow some flexibility. So you might have a really good location that just for whatever reason can't be open, say, for a few hours on a Wednesday for some reason. Well, that's why we use the 1 out of 5 or the 80% rule. So only 80% need to be open uniform, and you get some flexibility. Churches do not count at all. They, in fact, their intent is for them to, if you have a polling location in a church, we're just going to assume that's open the whole time, because most churches, if they are a polling location for early voting, do not allow it on Sundays. So we already know that's the case, and that's not our concern here. And really, that's pretty much it right now. As far as this is really a bill about fair elections. And I'll entertain any questions from the members.
Any questions, members? Representative Schofield.
My only question is the 80% provision. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't 20% be enough for all the chicanery that you were complaining about? If the 20% are in my part of town, and we say, well, those are going to be the ones that are operating at different hours, I would be just as aggrieved. The fact that the 80% in the other parts of town aren't. I would think 20% is plenty for all the problems that you're concerned about.
Actually, maybe we're looking at something like the glass is 80% full and not 20% empty. That's what we're saying is, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say that there's 5 sites. 4 of those sites have to be open uniform. The other one can have some flexibility. I'm sorry, we had to close for this day for this reason. That's what we're talking about. Did that answer your question?
Maybe I just see things through a large county lens, but we have 800 precincts, and and how many early voting locations? 32, 41. So if you said, okay, 10 of the 41 or 5 of the 41 can be monkeyed with, it's going to be the 5 in my part of town. That which would be the exact same problem we'd be concerned about in the first place, I would think.
Mm-hmm. We're not married to the 80% number. That's that can float up or down, depending on what the other members say and from feedback we get from stakeholders. But we wanted to just allow some flexibility at the local level, because you don't want to lose a polling site because of an hour or two, and that's why we exempted the churches, because churches are used quite a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? No. All right. The chair recognizes Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democrat Party to speak against the bill.
I'm Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democratic Party in opposition to House Bill 1615 as drafted. In our concern, I hear clearly what you're trying to do here, but our concern is across rural Texas. We have situations of county seat with small towns 20, 30 miles away. We know that those commissioners' courts will not open early vote locations in every small town. Therefore, they do mobile voting. Main courthouse is open the full time, but on a certain day they go to each rural town for a day. And so our concern is not doing away, sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, of doing away with that opportunity. Conversely, here in Travis County, not conversely, but additionally, here in Travis County, where we have a robust early vote system of, I think, almost as many as Harris County, at least 30, early vote locations that are open the full hours. They're geographically in every quadrant of the county, and they're in retail locations mostly. But we also have a situation where our clerk travels with mobile voting to each of the small communities on the edges of the county that are further away from these early vote locations. So she goes to Manor and to Pflugerville and some other, well, Pflugerville's permanent, but out to Lakeway for a day or so. And then she also has a system of going to all of the senior residential facilities for a day. And because there are about 20 of those, the same amount as the full-time, this bill catches that, and we would have to do away with all of that outreach to special populations where people can't travel. And I'm hopeful that we can think of ways. We would love to see this bill with just an exception for the general election and the primaries, where this is useful, because I do think this bill also solves the problem of all the other kinds of authorities cherry picking where they're going to go temporarily in mobile voting.
Any questions, members? Representative Schofield?
Mr. Maxey, isn't the cherry picking just as likely to be a problem in primaries, maybe not primaries, but in general? Well, it could be primaries too, I suppose, but you go and you find your voters. So you go to the places where the folks are likely to, low-income neighborhoods if that's your candidate, other places if that's your candidate. I mean, isn't it better if we say this is where we all vote, or you can vote from your house if you're older, as opposed to once the officials start getting to say where we're going to move these things, they can get to go pick their own voters.
Possibly, it's a difficult thing, but I do want to try to somehow maintain what's happening in rural Texas for people who have to drive 30 or 40 miles if this one-day voting goes away.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes Bill Fairbrother with the TRCCA Legislative Chair against the bill.
Thank you. Bill Fairbrother, Texas Republican County Chairman's Association, speaking against House Bill 1615 as currently written. While a slightly different political outlook than Travis County, Williamson County has a similar early voting strategy. We have 13 full-time early voting locations, no fewer than 3 in each commissioner's court precinct. And on a governor's year, we have 10 mobile locations. In a presidential year, we have typically 16 to 18. And again, our goal is the mobile early voting locations to hit places that aren't populated enough to justify a full 2 weeks of early voting, yet we still want to go there, or even places within a city which for various reasons the residents or the voters near there may not want to easily get to or cannot easily get to go voting. I'll give you a couple examples of those. Southwestern University is in the city of Georgetown, and there are 3 full-time early voting locations there. But a lot of college kids may not have cars, may prefer to vote on campus. We do 1 day of early voting there. The clubs in the school can advertise that. We serve their needs. And with this law passed, Williamson County would probably not pay for 2 weeks of early voting at Southwestern University. Similarly, the city of Bartlett is a city on the border of Bell County. It's about 15 miles away from the nearest full-time early voting location. Again, not a insurmountable obstacle to overcome, but having 1 day early voting, typically at the Head Start building in Bartlett, makes it convenient for those residents to come out and vote. Other locations, ACC Cypress Creek campus, Granger City Hall, Gerald Memorial Park, Liberty Hill Annex, all remote, small population areas where the population probably doesn't justify a full 2 weeks of early voting, yet we try to get out there and give those citizens an opportunity to early vote in their community without, in some cases, having to travel 15 plus miles, or in the case of retirement homes or colleges, make their way to a full-time early voting location when they may or may not have a transportation issue. So for those reasons, at this stage, we have some concerns about the bill as written.
All right. Any questions, members? Oh. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Colleen Vera with testifying on behalf of herself for the bill.
Thank you. My name is Colleen Vera, and I'm here representing myself, and I'm for House Bill 1615. I think this bill is trying to fix a problem that we do have in Harris County. We have a large population, and I do see that it actually does conflict with some people maybe in more rural areas, so maybe there could be a population component to this, and that would fix it. But what I wanted to show you is how, or what in my area, how this mobile voting stuff is being used. I gave you a sample of the website page of my school district who does use this mobile voting, and good luck trying to figure out where you're supposed to vote and on which day. And then I gave you a handout on the outcome of this election. If you notice, during absentee and early voting, during absentee balloting and on election day, there was like a 4 to 7 point difference in the for the bond and against the bond. But because of their strategically placed early voting locations on actual early voting, there's like a 67 point difference between for and against. So I'm not saying that the bond would have passed. What I'm saying is, in all other elections, when you look at other bonds we've had with our local junior college and things, all the types of voting are relatively similar in the point spread. In this mobile voting, it really is affecting the outcome of the election. So I do urge you to continue with this concept that you guys are on, and do consider the people that are in an area that is rural so that they are not harmed. But in a place like Harris County, when we have millions and millions of people and our district can afford to have places open, that we do make sure that we're not strategically locating our voting so that a certain area of the population that they know is going to vote for them is going to be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for supplying this information. It's
Thank you.
incredible information. Were there any questions, members? For Ms. Vera? No. All right, thank you. The chair now calls Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party for the bill.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying for HB 1615. We believe this bill takes important steps forward to create some kind of normalcy to what on a local level has been frequently chaos. We're not happy with the 80%. We think that could be tighter. We're not happy with the allowing of mobile voting inside urban areas because, as we've experienced, it's led to abuse. However, we do support setting standards and requiring that some minimal standards be met so that all voters in all areas have equal access to the polls and are able to express their vote correctly. Again, as we travel around the state, as I travel around the state doing classes and talks on election integrity, the number one reason I'm getting back for the decline in Texas voter participation is a loss of confidence in the system and the belief that the elections are rigged. I believe this bill would take an important step forward to begin to correct that perception. Please pass this bill, 1615, forward so we can implement it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? No questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office for the bill.
Ed Johnson, Harris County Clerk's Office, testifying for Bill 1615. We are definitely for any bill, as you can see the numbers, that would help regulate mobile voting inside of Harris County. particularly with school districts that are abusing it. Like I mentioned earlier, this committee's got a tough decision to make of how to keep rural counties that have to use this to get voters to vote, and how to solve urban areas. I will tell you, I did run into, during the special elections, it wasn't a special election in Harris County, but I heard rumor of it, had a phone call asking was this legal. It was, I think, State Rep Race 17, don't quote me on the number though, but had multiple counties within the state rep race, and some counties where early voting was only open from 8 to 4, and other counties were open 7 to 7 for the same race. So now that is legal inside the election code, but is it fair because people didn't get the same hours to vote? Don't know if your bill addresses that, but that'd be another issue to look into, trying to make all the polling locations open equal time.
Any questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes James Quintiero with the Texas Public Policy Foundation for the bill.
Good evening, members.
Good evening.
My name is James Quintero. I'm the Director of the Center for Local Governance at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I'll be testifying in support of HB 1615 because I think it takes some very important steps in the right direction. Under current state law, local authorities are allowed to use multiple voting locations with varying hours to conduct early voting by personal appearance. Though the intent of this policy is to provide Texans with many options, really I think it's generating some unintended consequences. Among those of greatest concern are discouraging voter turnout, empowering special interest, and really contributing to a heightened debt environment. On the first issue of discouraging voter turnout, when you have inconsistencies in the time and location of early voting polling stations, it can lead to frustrated voters. And obviously, when you have frustrated voters, you're more likely to have a smaller voting pool. It should be no surprise that making it hard or confusing to vote results in fewer voters. As a consequence of that, what you do when you shrink the voting pool is that you empower a smaller group of special interests within that existing voter pool. And so you have small coalitions who are able to influence a large well, from our perspective, large bond issuances. That's really where our concern is. In particular, bond elections with sometimes hundreds of millions or billions at stake are determined by a relatively small few number of voters. By allowing these special interests to heavily influence the direction of a bond election, what we're doing is contributing to an already heightened debt environment. When you look at the local debt numbers, what you see is that we have about $333 billion of existing local debt. That's an enormous amount of money. And so what I think this bill accomplishes is that it begins to address some of those concerns brought about by rolling polling, which act against the taxpayer. And so for those reasons, I'm here to support the measure.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions, members? Representative Phelan.
Thank you. Would you have any additional data on the rolling polling that would be, in comparison to Cypress Fairbanks?
As a matter of fact, we just published a paper this month titled "How to Ensure Fair Elections." I'm happy to pass that information along to you. It contains some information on the number of polling sites used in places like Frisco ISD and Cy-Fair ISD. I believe in Frisco there were 49 different voting locations. In Cy-Fair ISD there were 52 different voting locations, all with varying times and places. So it can be very confusing as a voter.
Yeah, manipulation, really. So.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Ashley Fisher with the Secretary of State's office on the bill.
Hello, Ashley Fisher from the Texas Secretary of State's office, here to speak on House Bill 1615. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Okay. The chair recognizes Kara Sands with the Nueces County Clerk's Office to speak on the bill. Thank you. Just got it.
Just going to town.
Good timing.
Thank you.
Just made it.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Kara Sands. I am the Nueces County Clerk. We also run the elections, and I'm here to speak on House Bill. So thank you for having me. I am.
Can you just clarify again what House bill you're speaking on, which is 1615?
1615.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you very
I have
much.
a stack of bills I'm
I
testifying on. So I am newly elected, and Nueces County has been doing mobile voting since 2003. And I believe they started doing it so to make it easier for voters. I've passed out to you the November 4th schedule of the early voting mobile locations. So once I took office, I had a lot of complaints just as a candidate. Voter confusion is the number one, because there's nothing, when a voter goes and they vote someplace, all the times are different, the places are different, there's nothing that tells you, they don't have to put up a sign saying we won't be there. I had a couple came to me that they had gone to a restaurant, and the lady, she had forgotten her ID, so they went back the next day and they were going to vote, and it wasn't there. And they just assumed it was going to be there. And so there's a lot of confusion going around. So I've pulled the program. We will not be doing it because the confusion is too high. And the cost.
How long has it been going on in Nueces County?
Since 2003. So
and I assume more and more locations have been added to every single election?
Yes, so we have, over 40. But we also have permanent substations that we will be using. And we're going to add on to that.
Do you recall in 2003 how many locations there were?
No, but I do know and I can get you that information. See how much it's grown.
Right.
As well. So I will do that. And also that actually the turnout, it's gone down to these the voting locations. Right. So I can get that to you as well. So for the purpose why it started, at least in Nueces County, it's defeated that.
All right, great. Thank you. Any questions, members? Any further questions? Well, thank you very much for being here. You just made it in, just in time. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 1615? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Fallon to close on House Bill 1615.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, just a couple of things, comments from the folks that took the time out to testify and were nice enough to do so, whether they were for or against. One of the concerns that I thought that I think Mr. Maxey brought up, which is a good one, which was in the rural voting, and I think we will do a committee sub and address that by doing a population basement, maybe 50,000 or 75,000, something like that. So in the rural counties, this just wouldn't affect them at all. As far as the mobile voting, I have a huge concern about this. I mean, think about this, members, as a candidate. I'm going to put signs at all these locations. I'm going to try to man all these locations. And let's be quite frank and candid about this. I think this actually, you could argue, hurts democracy because it's going to favor the better funded candidate every time with this kind of thing. You're talking about, wanting to run for even this office. And in this kind of a scenario, you better have an extra couple $100,000 if you want to compete with somebody that's got a lot of cash. So this is a bit of a concern for me, for sure. And definitely the cherry picking of your voters. And Williamson County is a red county. They can do it. I'm not saying that they are, but I mean that could lead to that in red or blue counties. So that's a big concern as well. And then this is just striking. I mean, it's absolutely startling, this, I guess, Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District voting, where the bond would have passed anyway. If it was a fair election, it would have passed, but it would have passed by 7%, not the 62% it had passed. You can't tell me. Here's empirical proof that you're putting your thumb in the scale. Whether or not you wanted, even if I wanted and voted for that bond, I don't want to win that way. So I think, again, this is a very simple, straightforward bill. I thank everybody for answering and
Representative Fallon, I appreciate the spirit in which you introduced it, and I do think we need, regularity and clarity for voters. It sounds like you're a candidate who likes signs. Have you ever
I just thought, the first thing I saw when I was like, my God, that's a lot of signs.
Have you ever heard the phrase "signs don't vote"? Voters vote?
Yes, and thankfully, yeah.
But thank you for introducing it, and if we can work on some language, I'd like to be helpful along those lines. But
Wonderful.
thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you. I only want the signs to vote that are going to vote for me.
You need to close.
Yep. And again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for laying it out, and I close.
Thank you, Representative Fallon. House Bill 1615 will be left pending at this time. The chair finally now will lay out House Bill 2366 for consideration. Recognize Representative Goldman to explain his bill. Representative Schofield offers a substitute to House Bill 2366, and the chair will call Representative Goldman to explain the committee substitute for House Bill 2366. So, members, currently the early voting clerk in each election is required to give each precinct's election judge 2 lists, one of early voters and the second of all registered voters in the precinct. The election judge is then supposed to mark on the registered voters list who has early voted before Election Day. This is often, obviously, not done at all or done on time. The committee substitute to House Bill 2366 clarifies and simplifies the process to ensure the list is marked by requiring the early voting clerk to mark on the precinct registered voters list for Election Day who has voted early before distributing the list to the precincts. The committee substitute reinstates the requirement that the marked list is distributed to the precincts the day before Election Day. And lastly, the substitute bill no longer gives the Secretary of State rulemaking authority on how this change will be implemented, as there should be no rules necessary to make. By marking early voters before Election Day, this bill seeks to eliminate any opportunity for a voter to do so twice, to vote twice. If the committee has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Otherwise, I reserve the right to close. Any questions, members? All right. Ooh, that's a good sign. Lots of fours. The chair recognizes Glenn Maxey with the Texas Democrat Party for the bill. Smart man.
Glenn Maxey, the Texas Democratic Party. In support of this bill, it's one of the most excellent bills today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I may have dropped this off to your office. This does clean up the situation of the problem where paper lists are still used, where the clerks are handed on the night before the election a list that they're supposed to stamp the next day, or before they get there they don't do it, then they forget to do it, and nobody's stamped, or while in the rush they misstamp list while people are voting, and then people end up being told that you've already voted because they misstamped them. These lists need to be done before the polls open.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The chair now calls Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office for the bill.
Ed Johnson with the Harris County Clerk's Office for House Bill 2366. Great bill, Chairman. We really like it. I will tell you, in 2008, I think it was during the primary election, there were actually thousands, because at that time Harris County was not pre-marking its books, there were thousands of voters that voted twice, once on early voting and then on Election Day. It was partly due with the Texas two-step during the Democratic primary election, but still, if the book had been marked, these people would not have voted twice. And it's a great thing. Harris County is definitely the largest county in the state of Texas. We're twice the size of anybody else, and logistically, we figured out a way to do this. This is a very monumental task to take on. For us, early voting stops on Friday evening, and by Saturday morning, you're handing out election supplies to election judges. So you have Friday night to print the poll book. We have 200,000 pages we print that night. And stuff into binders and put into boxes and hand out. But it's a doable thing. We can do it. Everybody else should be able to do it too.
Terrific.
So it's a great bill.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. The chair now recognizes Alan Vera with the Harris County Republican Party testifying for the bill.
Alan Vera, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying for HB 2366. Each voter should get to vote once and only once. This is much needed. Please pass this bill out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Bill Fairbrother with the TRCCA, testifying for the bill.
Bill Fairbrother, Texas Republican County Chairman's Association, testifying for House Bill 2366. Good idea, great bill, we strongly support. Thank you.
Very much. Any questions, members?
Now that's a great testimony.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. The chair now calls Keith Ingram with the Secretary of State's office on the bill. On the bill.
Keith Ingram, Texas Secretary of State's Elections Division, here to testify on House Bill 2366. We currently have 189 or 190 counties that use electronic poll books, and for those counties, this should be not an issue. I don't know, most of the ones that don't use electronic poll books are smaller counties, and so it still shouldn't be much of an issue.
Very good. Any questions, members? No. Thank you very much for testifying. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for, against, or on House Bill 2366? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Goldman to close on House Bill 2366. Thank you. I close. The chair withdraws the substitute to House Bill 2366, and House Bill 2366 will be left pending at this time. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no further business before us, the House Committee on Elections is now adjourned, subject to the call of the chair.